Welcome today to our webinar. My name is Rachel Sanders, and on behalf of the Virginia United Methodist Church Board of Communications, we would like to thank you for joining us for our small and rural church communications webinar. We have three guest speakers joining us today. We have Reverend Keon Huh, Jonathan Lemaster-Smith, and Jeremy Brown. And each of our speakers will share with you ways your small church with limited resources can still successfully communicate with your congregation and community. During today's webinar, if you have a question for one of our speakers, please enter that into the Q&A option on your screen. We will attempt to answer as many questions as possible depending on the time we have available. If we do not get to your question, it's okay. You'll receive a follow-up email to this webinar, and you're welcome to ask it then. You can also use the chat feature on your screen to connect with other small churches that are watching today. Today's webinar will be recorded and will be shared with all of our registered attendees within a week. So if you miss any portion of our webinar today, that's okay too. And if you would like to share it with others, that's okay. We'll share a link to view the full webinar here soon. I'd like to introduce our very first speaker today. Our first speaker this morning is Reverend Keon Huh. He is a pastor at Woodstock United Methodist Church in the Shenandoah River District, and Keon was born in Seoul, South Korea. He lived there in his youth before he moved to Moscow, Russia with his parents, who were both missionaries. Keon has helped with the setup and repair of computers, networks, websites, and sound systems, and in support of his parents' mission work in Moscow. He continued his work with computers and technology after immigrating to the United States with his family. Keon received a Master of Divinity from Wesley Theological Seminary, and as he began to serve rural churches as a pastor, he realized that he could share his gift of understanding technology. He continues to help churches and pastors upgrade their systems and make their ministries more effective with current technology and equipment. Let us welcome Keon Huh as he begins our webinar today with an opening prayer.
Good morning, everyone. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we give thanks for this morning and this opportunity to gather over Zoom and talk about and share our experiences and also learn about the technology that can help us improve our worship experience and also continue to do their mission to reaching out and sharing the good news with many people. Lord God, just bless this time. And Lord, it is just short period of time, but Lord, start something good in us through this opportunity. And we pray all this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Keon, and thank you, Rachel, for introduction. And it is my honor to be here to share some of my experience that I came in and appointed to the Woodstock United Methodist Church. Here is my circumstances of time that as I moved to the Woodstock, and what happened was I was appointed to the Woodstock UMC in July 2020, which was the middle of the pandemic, and I was very worried and I did not know what to expect. I was still learning what to do with the online worship previous appointment, and as I came in here, I had to figure out what we can do with the worship. And during this season of pandemic, I just had to grow and learn more about online worship. And today, I'm grateful for this opportunity that I can share this experience with you. And I'd like to start some myth about online worship that we have. First myth is that small and rural church does not need online worship. I mean, pre-pandemic especially, I heard so many saying so many things saying that we don't need online worship for small and rural church. We love in-person gathering, and there are no point to have online worship or invest on that. But during the pandemic, we find out that that's not true. we all had to learn and forced to transition to the virtual for the sake of our safety and the health issues. And we learned that online worship can help us, really even small and rural churches. But after pandemic, now we are in the post-pandemic season, and I'm already hearing that, and we are having discussion with our church leaders that whether do we need to continue the online worship and all that. And I truly believe that online worship has, or even online presence have great potential for small and rural churches, and which we'll talk about more later of this presentation. But I strongly believe that online worship and all this can help us and small and rural churches to grow more and reach out and share the good news of Christ with the potential of the audience and the people. The second myth is that it's too expensive. As you try to set up online worship and multimedia stuff, upgrading it, or even setting up the website, it's gonna cost money. And that make us kind of stop us or hesitate to try have online worship or even invest to this area. Let me share my experience at the Woodstock. What happened was, as we came in, we have to do a lot of things to improve our quality of live streaming and online worship. So as I came in, I tried to share with our lay leadership that yes, we are doing live worship with our phone, but it seems there are a lot of feedback that we need to improve our quality of our online worship, and it will cost some money. But since we didn't expect the pandemic happen, we didn't have budget for that, and we have to figure out something. But thankfully, there are so many resources to do that. So during the 2020 July up to July 2021, our church did this projects for our church, improving quality of the live streaming and online worship. We had to set up new email system based on Google, and we tried to utilize Microsoft system software like called Teams to improve our communication among staff, and also and the lay leaders, and the rebuilding church website and increasing online presence. So my question is, how much is going to cost? Can you guess how much did we spend for all these projects? We spent only less than 200. Thanks to the members' donation and some of the equipment stuff, but many other systems like an email system and the website, all that had been donated by the corporations. For example, TechSoup is one of the great resources for nonprofits. Through this website, we can receive free licenses and all the software support or even discount for certain subscriptions through this website. What we need to do is we have to sign up and just really search the products, the subscription that we need, and then we can request the company to donate a certain part of the cost or even full price. For example, Microsoft donates 5 free licenses for all this software in Teams and all that, or including cloud service. And also they provide discounts on the Zoom subscription. And it helped us really reduce our cost and continue invest on the online presence. Also, our United Methodist Communication, they offer the grant for website. So for 1 year, we receive free domain sub-service and web hosting, and they give us free template to set up our church website. So it did not cost anything for first year, and now we are only paying about yearly subscription, about $60 for our website. And Canva is the one that I'm using for my presentation right now. And it is good for social media, creating the post and image or the promotion image in that post. And this one is free. But if you want to have more features and the pictures and the images, we can upgrade to the pro version. And it usually costs some money, But for it, the Canva also offers the nonprofit donation. So if we sign up with our church 401c, that nonprofit status, they'll give us free features for Pro, and you can actually add many users working as a team with the lay leadership and the pastors. So yes, it costs money, but as a church, we have so much resources that we can get it for free or receive the donation and invest on our resources. Next myth is that it is too complicated. When we talk about all this online stuff, even computer technology, it seems it's very complicated. And yes, I love technology, but learning new stuff, or even as the pandemic began, learning about online worship, how to record it, how to improve the sound quality, it was a challenge. But we have to try. We have to start somewhere. And this is one of my favorite quotes, Thomas Edison. He said, "I have not failed. I just found 10,000 ways that won't work." So we have to stay positive and continue to work on this and invest on this, because if we start, we can always make it happen and we can receive help. And I'll also take this opportunity to say thank you and show our appreciation all those who are working behind scene on the technology or the slides or even sound and all that, because since we cannot see them and they are working behind scene, and we do not say thank you enough for their hard work. And also if there's something happens, they are the ones to blame, and they always receive all these complaints. So thank you for all those who have been working, and thank you all of you for joining us today, because I believe you have interest and you want to do something about online worship for your ministry and the church. And I would like to say that it is complicated, but we can always ask for help. Especially as United Methodist Church, we believe in connectionalism. And I'm so grateful for our board of communication creating these opportunities and providing training and support for our churches. But we can help each other, and there are help in our conference. And each district has so many pastors and the lay members who have passion and love for technology. And I believe we can work together and help each other, and helping especially small and rural churches with this technology and online worship and other stuff. So please ask help. And for those who have skills and gifts on this area, let us help the churches who are in need. So having said that, before we move on to the next section, if you have any other any question that you have, I'd like to really offer this time to ask, and I'll go back to some questions and all that. Or Rachel or Tony, if you can help me with some questions that I need to clarify before we move on, I'll do that. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. One of the questions that came up was Sean Smith had asked what website we were talking about earlier. I do believe that got answered in the chat as TechSoup. But Hyung-Suk Oh had asked which email system through Google. Is that the same thing, TechSoup? He was saying that our current info email system is not effective.
Okay, thank you for that. So email system is just like our conference email system. We have our church domain using woodstockumc.us, but the inside the system is based on the Google Workspace. So it's just like logging into the Gmail, but we are using our church account and address to do that. So it's more stable, since Google offers Gmail is a very stable email system, and we can use it for our church email listing and also communicate with among staff. So it is based on the Google Gmail. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. There was a couple other questions. Kevin had asked, well, he said that technology issues are great, but who is the audience for Church Online mission. I've been associated with 3 small rural churches. Most of the community, most of the congregation is older. They don't really know the difference between different web pages. Most of the community claims to be members of their old family church, even if they do not attend their church. So, so ultimately, who is the audience for Church Online Mission?
Thank you for the question. And during the pandemic, definitely it was all our members who have access to the internet. So definitely it was good. But for now, after pandemic or post-pandemic season, our audience is our community members who do not attend our church, and also our members who are sick, and also who are traveling. So it was very helpful for our members, and we received good feedback saying that, yeah, I was traveling, I was out of town, but we still could join online worship, or I could watch the recording of our worship. It was good. And definitely there is a potential our members or new members who are checking out our online worship and church through this online worship. So that's why I believe that it has great potential.
Thank you. Evelyn asked, what licenses are required?
So if you wanna do the online worship, we need to have a streaming license and the CCLI, and that the 2 license covers, and it will solve any most of the copyright issues live streaming. And CCLI offers that both are licensed together. So if you go ccli.org, I believe, if you go this site, and you can get those license for these 2.
Great. Mark had asked, how do you, this kind of ties in a little bit with the question that came before, how do you deal with older, less tech savvy people in the congregation where internet service in the area is poor at best?
Thank you for the question. I think it's going to be at the very end of this presentation. And I think after this question, we'll move on to the next section. But there are some ways that we can work as using the hybrid models, and hope I can give you some example for that, or at least one example for that. And we can just continue to wrestle with this and help small rural churches and the members who do not have internet access for that.
Okay, great. Did you want to continue, or there's a few other questions that people have asked, or would you like to continue, or do you want to answer a few more questions?
Since for the sake of time, may I just move on, and then we're gonna have more time Q&A for at the last or later on.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Good, then we'll just move on. So question is, where do I start? I mean, if you have the technology skills and if you know what to do, then definitely it's going to be easy question for you. But I believe you are here because you may not know, or you try but it didn't work. So you have question where to start. So I prepared today's presentation as a kind of 3 sections. That we're gonna talk about some the tech stuff, internet and the networking, and we're gonna talk about the software called Open Broadcaster Software, in short, OBS, and also streaming platforms. And I will not be able to explain everything within this 1 hour, but I'm hoping that this presentation will give you some ideas where to start and try it, and then reach out and ask help for me or other pastors or lay leaders who can help you move on and improve on the online worship. So here is a basic diagram how online worship work. It starts with from your church or home with your computer, phone, tablet, and I'm pretty sure that most of us, we already done this, and we know it works. And it's kind of said it records sound and the video and sends through the wireless system or network in our church or home to the platform called YouTube, Facebook, and Zoom. And then it will send to our members who are going to watch or join online. Today, we are going to talk about more here in this part, this top part, the first part, because these are the important part, because if we do not have stable or good quality of these equipments or internet, then it's not gonna work well. So let's talk about with the how we can improve internet speed, because internet speed matters. If we have slow internet, we are not going to have a good quality of the online worship experience. Well, there is a way always improve our internet speed by changing the plan. We can always get the better plan, but it costs more. But if it's necessary, we have to have as minimum download speed 50 megabyte per second, and upload speed is 20 or even minimum 10 megabyte per second to have stable online worship experience. So what we need to do first is that if your online worship is not working, you have problem with the internet, then you can start checking the internet provider's plan that you have at church or home and see it has enough speed for online streaming. If you do not have that, you should be upgraded. You have to invest on that. Or if it's too expensive, then consider changing the provider. And some internet providers, usually satellite internet service is one of the good example. They have a data cap. They throw the speed after certain usage of the data amount. And that will hurt online worship experience or streaming, because again, if it's slow internet, then it's not gonna help with online worship. Here is my observation and what I learned from our church and my previous appointment, that we have current internet options for rural churches or small churches is the satellite internet, which is available very covers very large of the geographical locations, but it is expensive and it slows down after using a lot of data amount. So that's the challenge. Or some areas we still have called DSL. It's very expensive, but little stable than the phone line that we used to use, but it's much slower than Fios or Xfinity cable or fiber internet that bigger cities or towns have. So here's alternative options that I want churches to consider, because nowadays the cell phone service and cell phone coverage is getting stronger and it covers more area. There is a plan called Hotspot, and it helps the church to access internet more stable and faster internet through the cellular signal. But it requires some purchasing equipment and signing up the plan. So it will cost some money, but still, if it is better, it gives better signal or better speed, I believe that it will be good alternative options to consider. And also, based on the hotspot now, Verizon and T-Mobile, they are kind of expanding in the service called 5G home internet. It is almost same way to do the internet with a hotspot, but they have a better equipment for this. And also it provides a better speed and quality of the internet for through this service. And I'm hearing that they're expanding this service to the business because it can reach out and provide better internet access or sell services for rural areas. So they are investing in this area. So if you have a good signal or from Verizon or T-Mobile or even former Sprint, since they merged to the T-Mobile, it is great to consider and explore this option to improve the internet speed and quality. So you have a plans and everything, but sometimes it's hard to figure out where you are with your church internet status. So is our church's internet good enough for our streaming? So let me give you some example of this. Okay. So if you go to the website called fast.com, you will see, let me refresh it, and it will do right away the test and the speed. So our church has a 250 megabyte per second plan. So it should show somewhere around that. Sometimes it's faster than that, or sometimes a little slower. It depends how your network is working, how busy is the internet provider, but it should give you some around the same number that you have planned. But download speed is, as I said, it's not much matter. We just need a 50 megabyte per second. But important part is this: if you click the show more info, you will see this section called latency and upload. So if your latency is unloaded is less than 50 milliseconds, it's good number. You're in the good quality. It's not gonna lag too much. It's not gonna slow down. It's gonna work. And loaded, it should be less than 100 milliseconds. So if you have these good numbers, then you're fine. And upload speed, as I said, if you have 20 megabyte per second, it's great. If you have a 10, it's gonna work without slowing down your experience. So if you go to the fast.com, I mean, there are many ways to measure the speed, but this is an easy and simple one. So I'm offering this. And if you have this, check it out and see the numbers. And if your speed, this internet speed, download speed, and the upload speed is different, then you should talk to internet provider and get help from them because there's something wrong. But if your latency is a bigger number than I suggested, like 50 for unloaded and 100 for loaded, then we need to do something within our church network system or at home. So here is, here I wrote down here, so you'll get these slides for later, so you can always come back. So let's say we have a high latency, like the number goes up, how we can improve our speed, our improving latency. First, very simple and cheap option is that, I mean, it's free option is that connect the cable, modem and router directly to internet. Ethernet cable, meaning that you connect computer or your laptop directly to your modem with a cable. Because that way you don't have to upgrade anything. If it's latency issue, it will solve the latency issue very easily because you are connecting the computer directly to the modem. But that option is not available for the phones or tablets, because it's going to be complicated to connect the cable to our phone. So usually our church and home uses wireless connection. So in that case, easy solution is that if you move your device, the computer, phone, tablet, closer to your wireless router, then it will solve the latency issue, because latency increases when you have signal interferences. So if you get closer, it will have less signal interference and you have stronger signal, and it will decrease the number of latency. Another option is that if you have some budget or extra money, then you can upgrade your router. And nowadays we have a 6th generation Wi-Fi 6 or 6E, and we can get a router for about $50, or even expensive one costs more, but cheapest one is $50 to $80, which will do the work. But the key point is that you have to upgrade router and also the receiver in your computer. For desktop, you may need to buy extra equipment for inside the computer, or for both PC and the laptop, you can buy UFC or USB Wi-Fi adapter that goes with the Wi-Fi 6 and 6E. Usually costs about $20 to $30, and then it will definitely increase your speed and quality of our internet. As I said, the wire connection is important and it's good. It solves almost every latency problem because it's like an expressway. I mean, now in Virginia, especially Northern Virginia, they are expanding the roads, and they're talking about expanding 81 and all that. But expressway is, good thing about it is that it's kind of dedicated line. You don't get much of traffic because you have that dedicated lane for you. So wire connection is just like that. So if you connect your computer directly to the modem using the wire cable, then it will give you much of a dedicated lane for you for your traffic and bandwidth. So it will help you improve your online speed. And also upgrading Wi-Fi system is expanding the lane. So like if you expand the lane, you have to do it in the both end, because if we expand the 4 lanes at certain part, but if we merge it to 1 or 2 lanes, then there will be congestions. And that's why when we upgrade, we have to upgrade both Wi-Fi router and receiver for better speed and quality of internet. So I think I'm gonna pause a few more minutes here and answer some of the questions related to this section about internet quality or improving the speed and all that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for walking us through that. There were several questions. One of our participants made an observation. Betty said that many rural areas only have one internet provider, if any at all. I believe it was, forgive me if I get the name wrong, I couldn't quite tell from the chat, but it looked like Renee said that all that is available at my church is hughes.net, and it's very slow, satellite-based 2.9, and there's no cell signal there either. So it seems that in some places there are some significant challenges to be overcome. Do you have any ideas for how those challenges might be overcome in those particular situations?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have, if they don't have a cell phone signal, we cannot have any alternate options for that. But I'm hoping that since the state of Virginia are really investing and asking the internet provider to expand their services, and I believe that Verizon and T-Mobile really, and Chantel for 81 areas, they really investing in this area, expanding their services. And I'm hoping that the area that they don't have a cell phone signal, hope they can get it soon.
And then one of the other questions that came up earlier, I don't know if you want to address it now or wait a little bit further into the presentation, but the question regarding how we come alongside those with less technical knowledge and skill within our congregations to be able to facilitate that space where they can fully participate if they are unable to be in person for any reason.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Sure. So how do you deal with older, less tech savvy folks in the congregation where internet service is perhaps not the best it could be? How do we come alongside them and make it possible for them to participate in the life of the church?
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying it. And I believe we can always equip our members for that and definitely teach them. And many of them actually during the pandemic learn naturally because they are forced to use online more during the pandemic. But definitely we can offer the workshops. And I believe that some of the churches, even the Northern Virginia, they offer for seniors how to use the social media and do the website or even some other basic function using the function of the internet and all that. And definitely we can offer that if you know somebody. I mean, if you cannot do it by yourself, definitely invite someone to give workshops or the training for the members and also explain the need of that and how, convenient using the technology.
Thank you. I had a couple of I had one piece of just somebody commented something in the Q&A. They said, we use a signal booster and it works well, allows us to do Facebook Live. So just affirming that, that there is some technology out there that can be helpful in boosting the signal.
Yes, definitely. And I'm not sure about other provider. When I was in the previous appointment, they didn't have enough a good signal. So I called T-Mobile customer service and they asked me $25 deposit and they shipped me the signal booster that I can use. And it was free. And they say when I return the equipment, they'll give me back the $25 deposit. So many providers, they are trying to really bring in the new customers in the rural areas. So they are offering this equipment like signal boosters or some other equipment that can help you to join their cellular service.
Great, thank you. There were a number of questions that related to some of the topics you were discussing earlier related to live streaming. Do you want me to hold those questions so you can continue on, or do you want to address some of them now?
Oh, I think I'm gonna kind of answer in my presentation as we move to the next section. But
Excellent.
definitely, if I don't answer, we can go over after that. So,
Okay, thank you.
well, so we'll move on then. We'll move on to the next section, which will talk about equipment that we have, and definitely we're gonna talk about the softwares that we are using, the live stream and all that. And again, our goal was that have a no cost or low budget for small church doing the online worship. So here is our experience. We are using software called Open Broadcaster Software, in short, OBS. And the reason we are using OBS because it's a free software, but it still gives a regular updates, and so many people are using, and they began to use it during the pandemic. There are a lot of support or step-by-step guidelines on the YouTube and the articles and the Google web search. So it is good resource that we can use as a small and rural church who do not have budget or finance resources to invest on this area, because it is going to be very simple and easier to use the bundle system called Mevo or Sling Studio, but it will cost from $300 to up to like $2,000, or even if you go professional, it will cost $10,000, $20,000 to set up online worship and equipment. But I think for small and rural churches, we can start small with a free software called OBS, and we can move on. And if there are more need, we can invest and upgrade our system later on. And also the strength of the OBS is that it has various plugins, means that we can connect and bring in external stuff to the software to customize it for that fits our circumstances or environment. And also it's user-friendly interface and easy to create and control. So as I mentioned, when we talk about online worship, or even setting up is hard part, is complicated, but even using part, I hear a lot or receive the feedbacks and it's so complicated. But here's a good news. My daughter, first child, is a 4th grade, and she been helping me with doing the slides and controlling OBS during the Sunday worship service almost every week since she was 3rd grade as we moved to the Woodstock. So if 4th grade can do it, we can learn and practice, and you can do it too. So please have hope and please bear with me. So here is the diagram that helps you understand why we are using the OBS. Here is the interface of this. I'm gonna show you a little bigger picture later. But the good thing about OBS is that we don't have to buy new equipment, at least for now. I will need a couple cables or a small mixer, but we can try with the equipment that you have. If you have laptop and desktop, you just need to install this software and use your app, webcam, or even phone camera to stream your worship. So OBS can connect your computer and make it as a camera and bring in the video signal from there. And the sound, many of our churches have the mixers and soundboard already set up, and this will be key improving our sound quality for online worship. We can connect soundboard our mixer to the OBS and send it to our streaming platform. That's why OBS is really helpful, and it's good software for small and rural churches who do not have a lot of financial resources to invest. So let me explain how to improve sound quality. This is a great example that when we do the live stream with our phone and tablets, we hear that it's getting better, but still we hear these gobbling sounds or echoes, and sometimes doesn't sound clear. But if you connect soundboard sound, which is already set up, your microphone set up, or if you have a keyboard, piano is all set up there, so whatever you hear from the out of speaker in your sanctuary, it will go to the computer and go to the platform if you connect the sound with a cable called 1/4 inch to the 3.5 millimeter stereo cable directly from the soundboard to your computer. many PC desktop has the input with the microphone is usually a red or pink. You connect the cable from the soundboard and to that port, then you will have a good quality of sound for the streaming worship. But if you have a laptop, these days they do not have this microphone input. In that case, we have to invest a small mixer with a USB function, which this mixer will help transform the analog sound to the digital, and it will provide a good quality. This mixer, again, it has like very expensive ones, but you can buy about $30 to $50 one with a US cable. And then with this amount, you can improve your quality much better. And when I came to the Woodstock, that's the first thing I did, because I received so much feedback that we cannot hear the pastors or the leaders clearly. So when I bought the cable, this cable, and connected from mixer to the computer, that sound was improved very well and better, much better. And then members will begin to see that with a good quality of sound and the experience, we can invest on this, and it can help our ministries by doing the online worship. So if you begin with the sound quality, invest in the cable or even mixer and USB cable, it can show the members that how good it is, our streaming and the online worship, and how it can help. I think we have some time, so I'm gonna show you the OBS, how to stream our worship as a sample. So let me share the screen, and I'm using OBS for our Zoom too. So here is what we are using it. So this is how it look as a OBS when you begin it. I have a scene set up. So if you prepare your scene is like the slides, you can just prepare ahead. You can just control it and showing all this if you wanna do it. So like you can control it. You will see how it changes and all that. But let me show you how to kind of give you some ideas how we are using it. So for example, we are setting up the online worship, right? So if you go here, I'm not gonna slow down much because you can always come back for recording. You just create a scene, worship, right? Then in the sources, this is the part where you can connect all these equipments and stuff for here. So let me action this and let me make it bigger. So first we have to connect the sound, right? So if you go add audio input, and let's say it's a worship audio. And then you can select a device. So I have a microphone, and I have a microphone for our laptop, natural microphone. So I'm going to use my external microphone and add into that. And then you will see the audio mixer where you will see all these microphones external, but you can control it here. And then since we have audio now, what we need to do is we have to add the video, right? So we go to here, and then we're gonna just do let's say, sorry, yeah, window capture. Let me do this. So what we can do is we can do the video capture device and name it as a worship video. And I'm gonna just use this one because I already set up here. So you will see my camera that is coming here. And then what we need to do is we have to connect this OBS with Facebook, because I'm in our streaming platform, which I'm gonna use it for Facebook for this time. So when you go Facebook, you will see button called live video. If you click this, it will walk you by step by step, and many of us probably done this. And you will see there's this connect streaming software to go live, because I set up as a streaming software. If you select webcam, probably this is the one that we've been using. Most of the time I turn it off, but instead of webcam, just using camera, we're gonna connect with the streaming software. And one way to do it is we have to use the stream key. So you copy this. This is like a house number and the street address as we search and navigate. And we go back to the OBS and then go to File, the Settings, and then click the Stream. And here you can choose the services, the platform that you are going to use. For us, it's a Facebook Live. And then you copy and paste the stream key from the Facebook to here. And then you click Apply, OK. And then if you click Start Streaming, you will see in the Facebook Live, it's not streaming to live yet, but you will see the screen that I'm streaming from OBS to here. And then you have to say it's the test. Webinar. Test. Save it. You are required to add the details because without it, it's not gonna go live. So once you see the screen that you are streaming from OBS to Facebook and you have details, then you can click Go Live. Then it will begin to stream what I'm doing right now on my computer to the Facebook Live. So if you go to Facebook and search our church page, you will see that it's on live. Let's go here and see it. Facebook, and you will see that Woodstock is live, and click it, and then you will see the live screen that we are streaming from the OBS. So yes, we need to get used to it and practice it, but still it's not that complicated to connect OBS to our streaming platform, and it will help us really small and rural churches set up our online worship with this software. So last part of this question is this. So how to choose a streaming platform? I mean, we can start with a new free streaming platform, and I'll definitely suggest that because we just don't know how it's not going to work, which is good for us. It's definitely paid service will give us more features and more things we can do, and it's going to provide more stable streaming experience. But for small and rural churches or who are just starting new project, I definitely suggest to start with a new free streaming platform, Zoom or YouTube or Facebook or Twitch, and you can just use that and do that. And which platform do the church members prefer? That's the key question. For Woodstock UMC, many of my members already in Facebook and they've been using it. So it was natural for us to choose your Facebook over the Zoom or YouTube and just use that. And then one thing that we did was we added a streaming service, paid service, connecting Facebook Live to our church website. And what happens is that whenever we do online worship, it will, it will stream to our website. The reason we did that, because some members or some people do not have a Facebook account and they do not want to sign up. So what happens is that whenever we go to the Facebook Live and streaming, it will stream to our website through the paid service. And then people who do not have Facebook account or who do not want to log in, they can just come to our website and access our online worship with this. And it will begin to stream what I'm doing. So this is why that paid service is always good and it provides some more features, but definitely is for the next step once after trying and doing many other things. So I'll stop here and maybe I can answer. Actually, let me just move on since for the timer's sake. So what's next? I think this will answer some of the questions for members who do not have internet access and all that. As we going to transition into post-pandemic, and since many small and rural church members said that, oh, we do not need online worship, it will decrease our in-person attendance, or what's the point to continue if we can gather in person? But I strongly believe that online worship has a good potential and a lot of potentials to really grow our ministry and make our ministry vitals. If we set up this online worship and set up all this streaming capacity, we can always do hybrid models, especially even post-pandemic, so many members getting sick and we do not want to risk others, so we stay home. So if we do not have streaming capacity, it's going to be hard. But if once we set up this streaming capacity or even online worship, we can use it for our gatherings, for our worship, or even meetings. So for our church, nowadays, we offer hybrid models for most of our meetings, like church council or finance committee meetings and all that. Because some members always travel, or some members who are not feeling well, they do not want to come in person. So using these hybrid models, people who cannot gather in person will gather, but we'll stream that and have a Zoom meetings over the Zoom or using other capacity to have a hybrid models. And here's one idea that I have not studied yet at our church, but homebound members is one area that we can use our streaming capacity or even online worship to reach out. I mean, for the members, homebound members who have internet access, it's kind of very easy because they can just join online and watch it, right? But many small and rural or homebound members, they do not have internet access. So once you set up the streaming capacity in your church and you begin to live stream it, every Sunday you will have recording of your worship after each service. And one person can download that file and upload it to the cloud service like OneDrive, Dropbox. Then it will automatically sync with the devices that you have, the cloud app. And I'm suggesting that having the tablet to set up the auto sync with the cloud. So once one person upload that recording to the cloud, that all these devices who it has the access to internet at church, at home, or even library, some other places, the device automatically sync and download that cloud recording of the worship. And then that person or team can deliver that to the homebound members. By doing this, they are not just receiving the audio file or even the sermon or bulletins, but they will have this recording of the worship and they can join our worship through the online experience. And that's one idea. And people are going to ask, so how are you going to provide the tablet because it's so expensive? For this playing the recording, it does not require that fancy iPads, like the latest iPad and all that. And many families, or even we can do it as a conference, there are so many households who have old tablets that are sitting or just in the corner. And we can ask a donation and collect it. Or if we have some budget or financial resource to do it, you can buy bulk sale for the old generation tablet, which will cost about $20-$30 per device. And if you can invite, you probably need about 10-20, I say, and then it will definitely be good use for that. And that's all from me as a presentation. So we have a few minutes left, so we'll go into the, I guess, Q&A session. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. One of our participants was just commenting that OBS, just the presentation of it seems overwhelming. I've actually used OBS before. Once you understand how it works, it's really intuitive. But are there any good tutorials you recommend to guide people? Is there anything out there that can be a reference for folks that are trying to break into OBS?
Yes, definitely. There are, as I mentioned, one of the good thing about OBS is that there are so much resources and the tutorials and guidelines, very detailed step-by-step YouTube videos and all that. So even you can search now, like type in OBS beginners and the YouTube, you will see this very step-by-step guidelines for this software.
Another question that came up was how secure are the free services such as Canva and OBS? How does one research who owns these companies and what they're about?
I do not have the information. I can definitely look into that, but from my experience, it was very secure. And also that's why I mentioned about updates, because it constantly upgrading, fixing the bugs for that. So that's why I believe that it's very stable, but there is no perfect system. But from my experience, it was pretty secure and stable.
Thank you. And what service do you use? So we know that you use Facebook Live, or that was in your example, using Facebook Live. How do you route the Facebook Live stream onto your website is the question.
So again, as I mentioned, that between connecting Facebook Live to church website, it requires a paid service. They used to be like free, but nowadays they're asking the charge for that. So for now, we are paying about $75 annually. It was the cheapest one that I could find, and we are using I can give you the name exactly. I cannot remember right now, but through that service, we are connecting Facebook Live, and it automatically connects to our website whenever we live, and it also shows the recording of the worship service.
Great, thank you. Is there a difference, Evelyn was asking, is there a difference in using Zoom for worship as opposed to streaming?
So Zoom, we actually tried the Zoom, but it's still like a limited. And I know that like we can do that with a public link, but we didn't want to too much on that. But one of the strength of the Facebook Live is that it shows from kind of one way, right? We just stream from our church to the public through the Facebook. Zoom, it's good to be a strength and also a weakness, but Zoom means that you participate together. So as more people join the worship, the video quality and sound quality will be decreased by the Zoom server. So we don't have control of that. So if you have about 20 people joining, then to make a more stable connection, Zoom will decrease our streaming quality to lower quality to do that. But for Facebook, it's going to be, they do that during the live stream based on the Facebook server, but it controls less or decrease less quality than Zoom. That's why we chose to do it over the Facebook Live.
Great, thank you. One question, I know we're starting to run out of time for your segment, and really appreciate the time you put into it. One question that came up a little bit earlier that I thought was important to circle back to came from Randy. He asked, how much of this implementation did you do directly while balancing your duties as pastor in comparison to how much you were able to delegate to members of your church? What did that look like?
So my case is going to be a little unique because as I mentioned, my appointment happened during the pandemic. So it was top priority for me to find the ways to the worship and lead the worship and stream worship. So I could spend actually at least like 10 hours per week for this one. But definitely nowadays, it's not going to be the top priority for many pastors and lay leaders. That's why I mentioned that we need to work together as a team and ask and try to find the person, even outside church, because I helped with the first UMC in Timberview, Virginia, and actually some of the helpers came outside church, and pastor really asked the trustee help with that, and trustee knew some people who knew outside church, so they just came in together as a team and they set up and for the streaming service or even installing some of the equipment, and they got help from the outside. So definitely these days I really suggest that really look for the helpers outside, even outside church in the community, and work as a team for setting up or even doing streaming worship.
Great, thank you. Another question just came through from Sean. He asked, are you having problems with Facebook blocking content? This has been an ongoing problem for them.
Yes, it happened actually, it began to happen a few months ago. So if you add the streaming license and the CCL LI number on the in the post and in the slide, it will definitely solve the problem. So let me show you, if you give me 1 minute, I can show you quickly here. So whenever we begin here, do you see here, is it too small? Let's show here. So at the title page, what I do is that when I create the slide, I include the streaming CCLA and the streaming license here, and it will repeat through the during the pre-worship time. And actually it solved the blocking the post because of the copyright issues. So I think posting the license in the details there, as I showed in the sample, or even using the slide put in there, it will definitely help you to prevent the Facebook blocking the post or the live stream worship from due to copyright issue.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Our next speaker, as I mentioned, is Jonathan Lemaster-Smith. Jonathan is the creator and host of Rusty Water Towers podcast, which focuses on faith and hope in rural life and ministry. Jonathan is the pastor at Macedonia United Methodist Church and Reeps Grove United Methodist Church in North Carolina. He also serves as an affiliate faculty at Kairos University, and he has studied Christian education and congregational studies at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary. Jonathan lives in Hildebrand, North Carolina, and we welcome him today.
Thank you, thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen to get my presentation up and running. And so yes, my presentation today is going to be utilizing traditional means of communication to build the kingdom, plus a little bit of social media and engaging the social media, utilizing these methodologies. So again, about me, she said, basically, you get the interesting stuff, or the CV type stuff, but I'm also just a person who likes to explore and look at things. And, you know, I've written and presented on mayonnaise, Dolly Parton, casserole dishes, and the values of all those in rural spaces. I'm a big fan of Charlotte Football Club soccer. I've got some of the scarves behind me, and there's a towel on the thing there. I noticed earlier that my flowers on my desk were, I thought, dead, but if you look closely, there's actually little green buds on it, so that was surprising. And finally, I saw a potbelly pig on my way to work today, so it told me to be weird. So you just may not be ready for what else is going to happen today, but it'll be fun. So we're going to talk now about rural culture, rural values, and then as well as oral communication styles, because most rural communities have what we might call durable values that are present in all of them, as well as operate mostly in an oral culture. And I'll get to what that is later. But rural cultural values first look at stewardship, deep place sensitive knowledge, making do, particularly making do as you see fit on your known land or sea, and then continuing your story. Stewardship is less to do with the offering plates at church on Sunday and more apt to how do we utilize what we have, who we are, in order to continue our story. You'll notice that it's all going to kind of point back to our story, to our heritage. As part of that, we run into the reality of that heritage becomes a big tool in rural communities in order to continue things. And that lives into a deep place sensitive knowledge. Now, a lot of people, when we say deep place sensitive knowledge, assume it means something like, you know, environmental knowledge. And that's partially true, although we know that many rural people have no idea what plants are growing in their yard, and that's fine. But what we do see with deep place sensitive knowledge is knowing that when someone tells you to go down and turn right at the old Pizza Hut, you know where the old Pizza Hut is. And what that means, even though there's not been a Pizza Hut there for 15 years. Now, Pizza Hut's an easy one because the old Pizza Huts tend to have a hat, but you know, you turn down at Mrs. Jackson's old house before you turn left at where there used to be a barn. And learning that sort of reality is crucial to understanding rural oral culture, rural cultural values as part of that. And then there's making do. Oftentimes, especially in ministry programs, we're going to tell people that you need to go in and make them better or more like us, or do these things and you will solve your problem, as opposed to that they are happy where they are. And a lot of times now they're dealing with issues that we're all dealing with in different things, but so often we have ministry programs that tell us to go in and fix these problems and your church will be fine, as opposed to doing what we know is really a rich reality for rural people, and that is continuing the story of their community, of their culture, of their history, of their church, in order to be able to further that. Now, that is intertwined with the gospel, but it also is infused with a lot of other things. And to continue this story can be good or bad, and depending on how you learn to continue the story. Some people think the story must just go on, and it needs to be exactly the same as the story has been told. The verses need to repeat on the song. But the reality is we can help in rural communities to figure out ways to relaunch that culture, relaunch that heritage in a way that both honors their culture and heritage, but also points towards God's kingdom as part of that. So we look at these rural cultural values and we see them as ways in which we're going to see communication working as part of this. And that brings us to oral communication. Oral communication does not assume that people are illiterate. It is a way of communicating in a rural context or many other contexts that are less like what the United Methodist Book of Discipline says we should be like. The United Methodist Book of Discipline is written for, and the committee structures are written for groups of people that operate with middle management understandings of the way things go. People doing those sort of things. So what we're going to see here is with oral communication, it's less about distributing information in ways that are more corporate looking, and it's going to be more about blending story, heritage, and experience together in order to create a means of communications. A lot of rural people are going to be mixed with proverbs and anecdotes as the way they do things. I know that in many of the churches I've served, the committee structure we're going to get to that in a moment, but the people on committees, instead of like trying to say, I don't like that or I like that, they tell a story to help us get to that. And that is a way of communicating that we have to live into as part of this. Now, I know that y'all are probably a mix of pastors and lay people, which is great. And I'm here to talk, and I'm here to talk to you, and there'll be different questions at different times as part of that. But if you live in a rural culture, you know a lot of that is very true. The next things is that our churches are communal and not committee based. So we are operating in rural spaces based on committees. So yeah, we have a church council, but when that church council decides something, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. I've been in situations where the church council has decided something at the meeting on a Tuesday night, and by Wednesday morning, it had changed because somebody found out about it and they didn't make sure that everybody in the community knew they had talked about tearing out the carpet or painting the walls, and someone didn't like that, so they went and didn't do it as part of that. It also means that decisions are made over time, information is communicated over time, and information is going to be communicated in rolling ways. It's not going to be, here's information, come and get it. It has to be distributed in multiple ways and rolled out over and over again as part of that. Then there'll also be an oral communication connection through asking. This took me a couple years to realize, even though I probably shouldn't have taken that long, I feel a little bad for it, is that when a church member says, hey, would you come over and help me with this? Or would you mind going with me to do this? They're asking to get to know you. They're asking to spend time with you. They're asking to communicate with you, is what I ran into with this. And that becomes a reality. That you live into how people communicate. This is just an intro to oral communication styles that will get us to the other part. And then finally, oral communication, especially in rural communities, is not going to be focused on the common good. There's a lot of oral communication-based communities are not going to be focused on common good. We often see like we need to do this for the betterment of society. What they are actually looking at, what benefits our community, whether it's our church, our churches, our community as a whole. It's less interested in a global perspective. They want to see how it matters to them, because oftentimes rural communities, when they have heard common good, what they're hearing is that we're going to do something and it's going to never get to helping the rural communities. It will stop on the edge of the suburbs and never get to them. So there's a suspicion of anything that says it's for the good of all people instead of for the good of the community as part of that. So that gives us a look at those rural values and oral communication. And now we're going to live into and look at the ways that we can communicate in rural settings, particularly using traditional rural means of communication as part of that. The second half of my presentation will look more at social media, particularly Facebook usage in rural spaces. So first is we need to be able to communicate with people our story, that we want to be connected with people, and this is internal and external, or that we have a cause, that people are apt to contribute if they feel like they're part of the story, connecting with people, and part of a cause. So it's not just about, so people are far more apt to write a check for a church fundraiser, even if that church fundraiser is going in just into support the bottom line of the church, than they are to simply write a check every Sunday and put it in the offering plate. They'll be apt to give more and give more of their time too as part of that. You will also see if you attach it to a story. If you call it we have the Willie Lou Richard Memorial Soup Luncheon that raises money for the local food pantries. As soon as we added her name to that, this was not an intentional thing. We just wanted to name it in her honor to continue the story. The income for that doubled because people wanted to honor the memory of this woman who cared so much about the community. And then finally, all of this should always be pointing towards the gospel. I regularly teach and preach that Jesus is a rural character, that Jesus is a rural actor, that he is living in a rural space for most of his life, except for the times he ends up in Jerusalem. So the gospel is easily communicated in rural spaces. So most of what we're going to run into for my presentation here is we're going to communicate the ways that we do in rural communities, but we'll also see that Jesus communicated in that way too, as part of it. So it's going to be communicating the gospel through our heritage. One of those, like I said, with that soup luncheon is to connect it to part of our story, to continue that story as part of it. Now, I'm sure everybody on here's churches have some kind of memorial plaques like this or honorarium plaques like this on anything that is semi-permanent in the church as part of it. Now, one of the realities is I don't know who any of these people are. I'm still at this church a year, but if I asked around, I could probably find out their stories, what they meant to this church, this community as part of it. And we can tell that and communicate it through our heritage. This is also true in terms of things like homecomings. Many of our churches have homecomings or Memorial Day services for their churches. And so, in other places they call it Decorating Day, they call it church anniversaries. Whatever you call it, a lot of times we have those and we celebrate the heritage and history of the church. Absolutely. But what we don't do is say, now, how are we tying this heritage to our future, to the church God wants us to be now as part of it? And doing so in ways that communicate to your congregation, your community. Yes, we're celebrating another homecoming, but we're celebrating the fact that we have helped this elementary school for the past 25 years. We're celebrating. We have members who have been members for 50 years, 25 years. We have new members this year who are now added to our story as part of that. You can also communicate that through such means as, telling your story by having descriptions on your, church social media. We'll get to that too. Making sure that you talk about the story of your church. Make it feel like it's part of the community, that it's not just outside of time and space, that it's part of that community. That's how you communicate the church. Now, this is also true because Jesus connects to the story. Jesus in all of his teaching is connecting to the story of the people of God, connecting to the story of the people of Israel. He's saying, now we're going to figure out how to relaunch this story in a way that doesn't just save all of us, it saves the world. And he's doing that in this story and doing it in such a way that connects to people's stories. The parables are stories that probably got told over and over again. Jesus's engagement with the scriptures, of course he's connecting with the story. Jesus talking with people in their communities, he's learning their story, their heritage as part of it. He's engaging with them in that. Next, communicating the gospel through visitation. I have run into several pastors lately that says visitation is not how we spread the gospel, that we don't need to go be visiting the church members because that's not how we get new church members, or that's not how we grow as a church. And the reality for me is, especially in these spaces, is people want you to come see them. Now, a lot of them, are busy working and those sort of things, so it's more complicated. But especially the elderly members, especially the elderly people who are in the community who may not be members of your church, appreciate a pastoral visit or a church, if you have a visitation team, visit. And in those visitation modes, you can take them connections to the church. Now, a lot of people will take communion, taking a bulletin, a newsletter, taking information about the prayer list to people, taking those sort of things to people and directly communicating it with them. Going to be and being in physical spaces with it. I call it Sunday afternoon front porch sitting. There's a lot of communication that happens just by being present in the same space together and learning about each other. In my first month here, I've visited probably 15 people, and I'm only part-time at these churches, but I've made an effort and prioritized visitation, and people started to reconnect with the church. People started to come back to the church. People started to spread the word. They've got a new pastor. He's a really interesting guy, and he visits and he preaches the gospel. Those are the two things they really wanted when they found out I was coming here. So then Jesus goes to the people. Well, we see that. Jesus goes out and to be with the people and visit them in their homes, spend time with them, even if he knows them, even if they're already part of his movement, but just can't travel with them because they're not part of that group that's traveling in that ministry. He goes to be with them and check in on them. And that's a way we communicate with our church members, and our church members will begin to communicate with the community. Our pastor is one who cares about this community, cares about us. Now, visitation doesn't just happen in people's homes. We know there are spaces in the community, third spaces we might call them in different ways. It's not work or church or work or school. Church is one of those, restaurants, different things. So we'll look into that momentarily, but first I want to get through this one. That's communicate the gospel through invitation. Jesus gathers people together. Now, invitation, of course, we know continues to be an anxiety-inducing thing, to invite people to church or to invite people to be with you in your faith. I know that some pastors just cannot handle when you invite people to speak at church. I have had a policy at every church I've started that we need to have a space for testimony, a space for people to stand up and share. And I have people just interrupt in the middle of service and feel like they just need to say something. And I let that happen. Now, sometimes you're going to get weird stuff. You're going to get strange things, but you're communicating to people that their testimony, their story matters just as much as the person up front with the microphone on and has the fancy degrees or the licenses or whatever as part of that. And beyond communicating through invitation to the people in your community, make sure people are invited to be part of your church. And what we mean by this is it's not, so I put this church sign here. And many of my churches have people who go out and change the church signs on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And I love it because people have called our church thanking us for our signs that got them through something. Now, some church signs don't have the characters that can move. Some of y'all have digital signs. Excellent. Be able to put things besides, this is our worship time. This is our pastor. Give them an invitation to feel, to connect, to be part of that. And then as you're going out and spreading information about your church, just through communicating all these other different means, make sure it's an invitational sort of thing, that you are welcome to come and be part of our story. Be part of how we're building God's kingdom. Be part of the community that we are, because we already know you're in this community. We want to get to know you more and put you further into this story as part of it. Next would be to communicate the gospel through invitation. Now, of course, Jesus gathers people. We know this. This is the one I felt like I didn't have to talk a whole lot about. Next, we're going to communicate the gospel through information hubs. That is that we need to go out into the community where people gather. Restaurants, the fire department, the elementary school, and make sure we're communicating in multiple ways. Oftentimes it'll be like, we need to put a flyer up at the restaurant and the fire department and send something with the schools. That is fine, but that's not as good as you taking time to go be at the fire department, spend time getting to know the restaurant servers, spend time at the elementary school. What we found is that as we developed a relationship with the elementary school next door to the church, they would be more apt to send home flyers with kids than if we didn't have that relationship. Several churches would send their flyers just to send home for their trunk or treat or their other event like that, and it wouldn't get sent home. But because we had an ongoing relationship with that church, we had people volunteering at the school. From the church, we brought kids over for an after-school program at our church for a Christian education type program for the kids. We had that ongoing connection that had been going on for years, and they were able to utilize that connection to support it as part of that. And we know that Jesus knows where people gather, whether it's at the well or the oven or on the mountain, or tends to be wherever he just shows up, they gather. The next would be to communicate the gospel through action. That is, making sure people know that your church is active and doing things. One of the realities I saw to talk about the after school program, for the longest time, they had children playing out behind the church in a nice field and doing things. I made the note, my wife and I were at the same church for a little bit, and she actually made this notice that what she saw was that this church had a huge front yard. So what we did was move the kids to the front yard where they were playing, making sure it was safe, they didn't get close to the road and setting up those sort of things. And people realized suddenly they've got 60 kids on a Wednesday afternoon running around, having a good time. What's going on at that church? Those sort of things. What other actions can you do? Decorating your church for Christmas on the outside too. Another one is to make sure that they know your church is involved in the community, whether it's through formal gathering things like the soup kitchens or the food pantries, or whether it's through more informal things like inviting people to a singing, making sure that people know that your church has gives out money to people in need, that sort of thing. That word will spread and does that. Jesus takes action in the community, and the word spreads about him. Sure, we may not be doing miraculous healings, but we are spreading the gospel through having people present in that. This is my favorite, communicating the gospel through gossip. I'm actually putting on this on Sunday because this Sunday's lectionary text in the Gospel of John is the woman at the well. And basically, Jesus is able to repeat back all the gossip that people would have heard about her. And to say, and I'm here for you. I can offer you new life. These sort of things. So gossip is something a lot of pastors are like, we don't need to do that. We don't need to gossip. People just need to go home and leave after church and not gossip and stand around and gossip. Let them gossip, but do the work to sanctify that gossip, to offer ways to create that as an information sharing vessel, that instead of saying, did you hear about Joanne and what happened to her son? Turn it into, I heard that something's going on with Joanne. Maybe we should go check on her and see what's going on. I heard somebody's son was in the hospital. Let's see if we can tell the pastor or the visitation team that. Have somebody go visit it. It's great. And that's so great. I've gotten it now to the point where people understand that they need to, that I am fine getting 15 phone calls if someone's in the hospital. I'm fine getting Facebook messages and text and all of that because we are communicated. And I'm going to call other people in the church to spread the word whenever something like that has happened. Now, you're going to get some of the unsavoriness of gossip no matter what. But the reality of it all is that we need to think about what this gossip can look like for us in a new way. All right, let's see. Yes. Yeah, so we're going to look at communicating with minimal internet. So many of our community churches have minimal internet. One of my churches does not have internet, does not have a phone, does not plan to get it, does not want to get it. One of the myths we have is that every church should be streaming their services. And I just don't think they should. I think if it's part of who that church is, this picture is actually a church that doesn't have internet. If it's part of who that church is and fits with what their story says about them, great. But to tack something on that feels forced that people aren't really into because we're supposed to, because we're being told to by the annual conference or both and people, or that, somebody else's church does it, that becomes an issue of, does this fit with our story? And if things don't fit with churches' stories, they're going to be anxious to engage with it. They're more apt to reject it. The next is that every church should have a tech team, a huge tech team, or several people trained to do stuff. I think that's good if that's something your church wants to do. But we have one person with a clicker that changes the PowerPoint slides, and all the microphones have been set the same since the past 25 years. I sometimes have to change the batteries of my microphone during the worship service. But that's okay because it fits with that church's story as part of that. The next is that every church needs an elaborate website. I don't think so either. I think Facebook is the best where people go to look for churches now, especially in rural settings. They're not going to go look for your church's website. They're going to go look, do you have a social media presence as part of that? And in the end, they're going to know if your church has a Facebook already because your members should be sharing information that's on the Facebook as part of that. And the next is every church needs a lot of online offerings. My churches don't want to have online offerings except for at most sharing things on Facebook, because this church doesn't have any internet, doesn't intend to. The other church has internet. The church I'm in right now has internet, as you can see, but does not plan to do any sort of major streaming capabilities, because that is not what fits with their story. And also the people, they decided that if we were going to be streaming, it would be for the shut-ins. It would be for the people who aren't able to come to church anymore. And they said, basically, they asked those people, and they said, well, I don't have the internet. I don't want to get the internet. I don't want a new piece of technology. If I can't come to church, I will get someone to tell me what happened as part of that. And so they've chosen not to do it. Now, in the future, it may change, but it's up to them to decide if that's now part of their story, part of who they are engaging. Because I don't want to come in as a pastor of a church and say, you need to do it this way, because me saying you need to do it this way is me saying, I know what's best for a community I've been in for 5 minutes, as opposed to people who have been there for generations. And it's not just about the people now, it's the people out in the cemetery. It's hundreds of people buried whose story is continuing on because of this church. I don't want to be the person who says, all of those people, I'm more important than all of those people. So that's what I get into with that. So now we're going to look at communicating with minimal internet. External space. One of the realities we look at is that we have a huge possibilities with our church in our external spaces. This church right here, beautiful. What it does at Christmas time is all the lights in the windows are on. And then what they do is they put Christmas decorations around their church sign, lights, because they have a pole, electrical outlet that goes out there. At different times of the year for different events, they have one of those crazy inflatable armbands they'll put out to draw people in to events for kids and families. They're using that space. This is also that church where we moved the kids to the front yard. That is communicating with external space as part of that. What we also see with your church sign, putting up banners, putting up images, utilizing, if your church is into some sort of creative art installation, those sort of things. And by creative art, it could be a quilt square on the side of your church. I love the quilt art that you see in the rural areas as part of that, and putting that up on the church. And maybe you change it for the church year. You create something interesting that makes sense with your church's story, that you let them tell their story with that. Also, I know that some churches have beautiful gardens that are outside that people can pull up and go and pray in. I know a cemetery communicates a lot. I know a basketball hoop that's not rusty and falling apart but has a new net on it. Or, a church near here is putting in a pickleball court because there's no pickleball court in this part of our county, so they're going to do that. Doing the things and putting out the information says this is who we are in the community and this is what we're doing in the community as part of that. Because I've seen churches that I understand why churches get the safety glass that goes on the outside of their window, but several churches around here have instead put up wood so that the people outside the church can't see the lights on this church when you have evening services, can't see the beauty of the history of the stained glass window, because they were worried about protecting those so much that they were willing to cover up what you can see from the outside as part of that. The next we're going to look at is direct communication. Again, with the visitation, people say, I don't have time to go directly talk to everybody. No, of course not. I'm 10 hours a week at these two churches. I may be going to 20 in July. That is the most I will ever be at these two little part-time churches for me. But I have people who will directly communicate with other people. I have people who know that Sue knows she needs to call Mary to remind her that Bible study is on Tuesdays. Nancy needs a reminder that when it's Communion Sunday, she needs to bake the bread. Those sort of things. We communicate that directly. When the church is having an event, yes, we put it on the church sign, put it in the bulletin, put it on the Facebook page, but there's also that reminder going through, you hear Reaps Grove's having their Easter egg hunt. So y'all come out, bring a couple bags of candy, we'll be good. Any of the kids in the community are welcome. Those sort of things to connect with it. Direct communication also means maybe you have a phone tree system, and that's whether it's a written out phone tree system or it's a computer program that calls everybody and gives them a short message. People still appreciate that. You can now get the text messaging services if you want that. These tend to work better in rural spaces that don't have minimal internet. I know that further from here, I have students in the Dakotas that when it rains, the internet goes out for the town. So they don't rely on it at all as part of it. They are still calling, they are still direct communicating, they are still dropping by and telling people when things are. And they know that that's part of their story and it makes sense. Next is the communication with minimal internet communication hubs. This is a picture of Mamie's Drive-In, a famous restaurant in a small community in North Carolina. The one near here is called Cat Square Family Restaurant. One of the realities, the other things is, you know, my previous churches, it was the elementary school, the fire department, the gas station. Where do people go and gather and find out their information? And it's not just about putting up a flyer saying that we're doing a food drive at Macedonia or we're doing a soup lunch at Reeps. It's going in and continuing to develop ongoing relationships with the people who run these restaurants, with the people who are there every week. Because I know at Cat Square Restaurant, if I go there for lunch after this, there's a 60% chance I'm going to run into a church member. There's an 80% chance the waitress is going to know my name and be able to have my drink before I get in the door because she sees me coming. Because we've developed those relationships, and they're more apt to tell people, hey, now y'all go on down to Reeps tonight for supper because they're closed, they're only open for lunch. Because they're having that, or you know, I heard that Macedonia is doing this Bible study. Their palm tree is having a revival. Y'all ought to go out to that, because we have that relationship. It's also a quid pro quo relationship as part of that. That we have a quid pro quo relationship. We are going to patronize these restaurants. We are going to go and eat. I'm going to go eat every Thursday with my lunch bunch group at Cat Square, and then on Tuesdays we have a group that goes for dinner at Northbrook Family Restaurant. And they continue to tell them how they're doing, tell them how the church is doing, connect with each other. And that way that begins to get spread as part of that. So we're going to stop here before we get into actual social media and internet and the other parts and see if there's any questions or comments. I've seen some come through.
Jonathan, thanks so much for guiding us through that so far. One of the questions that came through is, and I think you started to address it just then, how are your churches engaging in outreach to the community to grow the community of faith?
Mm-hmm. So yes, my churches are engaged in outreach in the community, particularly by being present in the community. They decided that they didn't want to do huge mission type projects that were everybody come look at what we're doing. What they've done instead is empowered the people in the churches. I've got someone who is every Tuesday serving at the soup kitchen. I've got someone who goes down to Laurel Hill Methodist Church to help with the food pantry on Thursdays. I have two different people who try 2 different routes for Meals on Wheels, and I just tell them to tell about it when they meet people. That's how we do the evangelism. We're doing that outreach that way. In terms of connecting with people to come to things, again, it is connecting by telling people at these spaces, hey, the church is having this, if you could spread the information around for it. The church is doing this, if you could spread this information. I'm telling my church members to do that too. It's not just me going to all of these restaurants. Like I said, I don't have the time to go to all of them. I may go to one of them each week and tell them about it. And I have people getting that information out, telling that sort of thing. Also in their visitation, we still have very visitation heavy people in this community. So they'll just stop by people's houses and say, hey, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? Oh, by the way, you should come to the church. There's a singing. We put out on our Facebook for 2 weeks ahead of time that there's going to be a 5th Sunday singing at Reeps Grove. We have people who go out with little postcards when they go see people and say, hey, there's going to be a singing at Reeps Grove. We have more people at those singing events than we do any given Sunday, because they know it's going to be a time for fellowship, fun. There's going to be some prayers. There's going to be a meal. They get to catch up with people. Some new people come every time, and we introduce them to each other, and then they come to the next one, or they show up for the next thing. It's sort of this, how does that make sense with our story? Our story is historically, this church is known for revivals and singings. So we're going to lean into that still. Now, it may not be the same bluegrass and Southern gospel groups that come. Maybe now we have the praise team from a church in Hickory comes and plays for a set for a donation. Maybe we have people who come from the high school band, a jazz band, to do a set and do a mix of spiritual and secular. That way you're connecting with the schools too as part of that, to engage with that. So there's that.
Great, thank you. Can you suggest a good text messaging system?
No. I mean, yes. I mean, I think Remind is pretty good, but so many of them are designed for school systems, so it's really hard. So I've not found one I like a lot. Remind is my favorite so far because you can set up different groups and do that sort of things, and you can send people out text messages. and to do that. And it's basically free. I think, yeah, I've done it for free, and you could do it from your computer or your phone to send out, which is nice. And it's simple stuff. And you can also now, for people who have smartphones, it'll send links to, registrations for things, or like, we need people to sign up to bring ice and drinks to this event. Can reply this way, and it'll populate the spreadsheet so I know who's bringing it. Those sort of things. These churches do not use that. They use a basic phone system called One Call Now, and that's what works for them. Because people will just know to call the secretary, our volunteer secretary, during the week and say, "Hey, I heard we need chili. I can bring 2 pots of chili." That sort of thing.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, I've
Mhm.
also heard good feedback about some of those services, but yeah, I think you have to just go out there in terms of seeing what is available and assessing what your particular needs are.
Mhm.
One other question, Jonathan. What does an effective social media presence look like to you?
So we're going to get to that in the next part of this, where we talk about social media and rural communities and Facebook.
Great. Well, why don't we continue on then?
All right. So now we're going to communicate with middle Illinois. Apparently, this slide ended up there, but that was the quid pro quo slide from the last time. That we need to help each other in the community. Rural communities are not just about free giveaways. That we make sure we support the organizations that support us. So social media in the rural church. I love social media. I am crafting myself as a public intellectual. If you go find me on Facebook, I am posting too much. I am what I call publicly loud, or professionally loud. That I'm just all over the place on that. So you're welcome to follow me on Facebook. I post lots of stuff about rural ministry, Methodist studies, those sort of things. So in rural communities, Facebook especially will just sort of be the public square in a lot of ways. People will share with what fits with their story and what fits with their community stories. You're going to see a lot of memes. You're going to see family updates, stories, recipes. I see a ton of recipes in my community, as well as some videos. These communities, especially the ones I serve, have not gotten into the real TikTok, YouTube short sort of situation, nor if they share videos, it's going to be videos that are just posted to Facebook or those sort of things, or maybe a YouTube video. They treat it as a community hub, like I said, that they'll be posts all the time. Who's shooting guns over on Timberline Road? Or what's going on at the elementary school? There's a lot of extra cars there today. Just post it on Facebook, hoping that people respond. And that's sort of the reality of mine. So sometimes I'll have to, even on my Facebook post, Reeps Grove specific, what's going on, down Halls Grove Road, or Hildebrand specific, what's going on over at the theater, those sort of things that happens with that. I will also tell you that mostly in many rural communities, the boundaries are blurred with social media. So businesses, people, politicians, churches all tend to post as if they are individual people. Some places do have that sort of, we have a more curated space, but it'll often be like a restaurant copying complaints that people have given about their town and posting it and telling people to roast them. Or that or that politicians will share everything they think about in that community. And that's what gets them elected sometimes. People aren't going to have the sort of professional boundaries that a lot of people would expect us to do on Facebook. Everything gets shared as part of that. And you have to learn how to be okay with that. Because what you run into with that is that everything is public, everything that's real and it goes on social media. Sometimes, while my church doesn't live stream, the videos of me preaching will suddenly be on a Facebook of a member. Or a quote from my sermon that I don't remember saying will show up. Or pictures from the event at church where we raised the money for the soup kitchen show up on somebody else's Facebook, and somebody from the church just shared their post. That sort of reality is what is happening. Now, I know that the idea around social media policies, safe sanctuaries policies, child protection policies, just media use rights, those sort of things are real, but we have to figure out ways to do it that make sense in the stories of the people. So as we think about that, a strong social media presence lives into the story of the church and how the community works, what goes on in that community and how it gets shared as part of it. So what I'm going to talk about now is mainly Facebook, but it'll work in other instances too, because again, most of the people in my rural communities are very Facebook oriented as part of this. So Facebook basics is what we'll get into, and how to best utilize Facebook for telling your church's story, for getting out what it means to be part of that and how it means to the community. You know, I'm a big fan of having a church Facebook page and maybe a church Facebook private group or semi-private group. The pages are for the posts, the pictures, the events, the connections. The group are more for the internal things. It's where you say, hey, there's a PPR meeting on Wednesday as one of those spaces you need to announce it. Or that, you know, the Faith Sunday School class is going out for lunch at this place. Come on out for that. It's just for the Sunday School class. Particular announcements to remind people of particular things as part of that. Now, but one of the reminders is that even in a group like this, everything is public. Whatever gets posted in that group is essentially going to be accidentally fair game, even if it's a private group for that, because that's how people operate with social media. The permeable lines are, the permeable membrane is very semi-permeable, very permeable. Administration. My recommendation is that if your church has a Facebook page, you have 2 or 3 people who post. I recommend that if you're posting about events or upcoming things, you know, a few weeks out for big events, as part of that, include the day before and even day of reminders for things like Bible study, worship, those sort of things. Because we've had people who've said, hey, I saw that y'all were having a Bible study, so I thought I'd come by and come as part of that. And it's very clear, even my church, a small church like mine, they're very clear. Bible study, 6 p.m., Reeps Grove, Fellowship Hall. That's part of that. And in terms of that, you know, some people are like, it's a lot to do all of this. I recommend churches posting at least 3-4 times a week. Some churches post a lot more. Some churches haven't posted since 2022, 2021 even, when I looked them up. One of the ways you can do that is use Facebook's internal scheduler using the business pages, or you can use an external scheduler. Planoly is one of those, but Facebook knows when you're using a scheduler and is less likely to share your information if you are using a scheduler app that posts things for you. What I recommend doing is having someone who's writing out all of these things each week and just setting an alarm on their phone and knowing when to post it based on what your community's traffic is like on Facebook. Some communities, lunchtime is the best time. Sometimes 8 o'clock at night is the best time to push things out. Sometimes 7 o'clock in the morning is the best time. Sometimes you just have to post in different spaces. One of the realities to look at is that your post needs to be readable and attractive as part of this. So make sure you're not posting huge paragraphs of text. Take pictures of that. We'll get into that momentarily. I have a whole thing on that. I think I have a picture to show you. Take pictures of your church and your church folk to just post, you know, flowers in the church garden on occasion. Post pictures of your group at the restaurant. Post, you know, somebody celebrating that they're at worship that day. Sometimes just post for fun. Make sure you get at least verbal permission to share things, especially if you're going to share someone else's status as part of that. You know, post the fun things. I've seen a church that posts a knock-knock joke or a riddle every day, and at the end of the day, they reveal it, and people get excited about that. It's a thing they do to draw attention to them. That's simple, fun, those sort of things. Sometimes, why not post that informational, historic things? People often have, especially right now in the United Methodist Church, people often have questions. So posting information about what's going on in the United Methodist Church and what it means to try to dispel disinformation, because I will tell you, information goes around. Apparently, my church is disaffiliating. I've never heard of this. We haven't had any conversations about it. We're not interested. We've had conversations, but we're not interested in that. But other churches are spreading that rumor for some reason. We're hearing it, so we're having to figure out, we plan to stay United Methodist and figure out how to communicate that well as part of it. So when we get into post-readability, here's what you get. Most people are reading on their phone or tablets if they have social media. Most people are on this far more than they're on a computer during the day, or when they're on social media at least. So you can have brief posts or long posts, but I would say space out well. Have the divider every 1 or 2 sentences, because as you're scrolling, those spaces are going to be, white space is more pleasing to the eye. To see that, have a divider every I use periods. I'm very simple so that it's not there. Some people will use emojis, like a little cross emoji or church emoji or something related to it. Some people will use an asterisk or another symbol, but they're doing it in such a way that they're posting and it's scrollable, that you're going to see it as you go up. The next would be to make sure that if you use pictures, make sure they're interesting pictures and to use them. The next I will say when you have posts is don't post your links in your posts, because Facebook is less likely to share your information out to people if you post your link in your post. But link to the event in the comments, link to the video in the comments, those sort of things, because it's more apt to get circulation if it's in a comment and not moving around as part of it. I think we talked about Canva in the previous one. I say use that. You can use Photoshop or InDesign or something intense like that. Canva, I can make something like this on my phone in 5 minutes. Put out the clear information. Do not overcrowd a graphic like this. I let a rural clergy day apart. All it needed was that. And I posted a link to it in the comments of the event. We had 25 people show up because they saw this sort of graphic. Now, I realized that this image later on looked like, in my mind, a pack of Marlboro cigarettes. I'm not endorsing smoking at all, or even Marlboro. I just thought it was interesting as I looked at it. That's my rural brain saying, oh, I've seen that image type of thing before. It was, yeah, as part of that. And dropping that as your picture in that. And like I said, when you post links, you can post link, but make sure it's in the comments is better, and make sure that link works for part of that. The work, you see these links that get shifted and that break. Make sure your link is working as part of that. Events. I love posting events on Facebook pages because these tend to get more circulation. Now, don't do them for every Sunday of worship, but do them for when your church is having the singing, when your church is having the meal, when your church is raising money. And the benefit of events is you can give people admin rights to the hosting rights to the event, but they're not hosting rights to the church. So they can do the stuff in the event. So if it's the United Women of Faith, United Methodist Women Group in charge of the meal, you can give a couple of them hosting rights alongside of you so that they can post their information in the event. Also, when people click interested in the event, what you're seeing with that is that gets shared that, such and such is interested in this event, or such and such is going into this event. Most people are going to click interested. Even if they click going, that doesn't mean they're going, but that means that they're trying to get the word out about it. They're using that public reality of rural spaces. If they know they can do that, that'll let people know that event is happening. And to be clear in it, because we've had a lot of spam lately with events particularly, be clear in it who to contact if you have questions, and what to do if this issue happens, and that we will not ask for money in the comments unless you are. Because my wife's church had a reality where they had someone posting, make sure you Venmo us your information, your fee for the table. Person was out there stole $35 from a church member because they didn't pay attention to who it was as part of that. And then like I said, monitor your pages. Scammers will jump in. People will argue. Sometimes people have an important question that gets dropped in a comment of a post that you realize, oh, that might be a pastoral issue I need to deal with as part of that. And those sort of ways in doing so. And when you do this, I'm going to encourage you to use Facebook like you're using it, like you're acting in the world. People are more apt to see your post, not from your page, but when a church member shares the post from your page, because that will get more circulation. And you especially know, because you know people in your church that are friends with everybody in that community, everybody in that county over. So that you can know if you can get them to share that thing once or twice, you're going to get more traffic. If you do that sort of things, those more shares get more impressions based on that. Get other churches and other businesses to share it for you as well, both on their social media and in their present reality. Encourage people to share it with others offline. What I often do is also post a link to the graphic that they can print out and give to someone, or that they can just, those sort of things. So they have that where they can do it, or they can just, hey, pull out your phone when you're over at your grandmother's house who doesn't have it, and let her know, did you know this was going on at the church, and see if they did as part of that. And looking at that. Those are figs from my fig tree. Everybody in my churches seem to have fig trees, so we all share our fig recipes as part of one of our Facebook things. Reels and videos. If you're going to want to get into Reels, videos, TikToks, don't overproduce them. Overproduced things where it's got a whole light crew and it's all very professional. People don't like those as much as they like me in an office recording on my phone saying, hey, we're going to be doing this and this and this, and I'll be at the church for this time if you want to come back. People are much more apt to respond to that. Stories also work well when you can click add event to story, add post to story, those sort of things, as well as just posting things in the stories. What I would say is also when you're posting your service, especially if you're a church that doesn't do streaming but wants to post part of your services because you can have a way to record it, you don't have to post the full 45 minutes. People don't have that attention span on the internet. Instead, take out the sermon and post it. Take out the children's message and post it. Take out the choir specials and anthems and post it. Those sort of things. Do that 3-minute thing. And if you're interested in more, here's when we worship. Those sort of things. Post your church announcements there, of course. Have somebody giving church announcement. Have a child giving a church announcement. Have different people giving their testimonies in a 5-minute reel. These are ways to connect with the community as long as this makes sense with your story, because we can transition our story in an interesting way to the internet in order to do all of that. So that's what I have for you today. I didn't want to get too in depth with everything because I just wanted to give a space for conversation and comments. So we've got a few minutes for the talk.
Well, great. Thank you so much. We've got a couple of questions that came in. One was, what would you suggest if members say they won't sing in the choir or come forward for communion because they're concerned about being on the internet?
What I would say is that's a choice they make. You can also not have communion live streamed. And if they don't want to be in that, your church needs to decide what it's doing. You can tell people then, sorry, you're not going to be in the choir.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it is contextual, and having those conversations and being clear on what the purpose is definitely important. Along those lines, or along similar lines, you had talked earlier about sharing posts, just spreading the word. One question that occurred to me is, what are some good strategies for creating a culture of sharing within your church?
Telling people from the pulpit, hey, share the Facebook posts. Telling people when you're at Bible study, hey, share when we post about this event so people will come to it. Those sort of things, making sure people are doing it organically, that you're not to remind people, because I have people who every Sunday will check in on their phone at the church and Facebook. That's great. They do that organically. I didn't tell them to. That's just what they do. Other people aren't going to get out their phones and play on Facebook for that. So have them share, when they get home, great service at the church, or hey, we're doing this at church this week. Come out and join us. Those sort of things. Encourage that as part of their ministry and their testimony, because you've got some people who will never try to share their faith with someone, but they will share a church event, or they will share, especially if it's something they're passionate about, a mission, a cause, or something that's great for them, or something like, if it's the young parents in your church, they've realized, oh, this is really good for my kids and for me. Let's share it and get it shared that way.
Absolutely. One question somebody had in the chat was, and I might have missed the context of this, so we may need more information, but she had asked, how do you take out things?
So there's a couple ways to do it. One is that you can get a software, and the previous presenter may have better after. I pay for Adobe Premiere to clip out portions of videos and do those sort of things, because I'm a lecturer online too, so I edit my videos. What you can do instead, though, is be intentional about having someone else there. Like, you may be recording and live streaming your service, but you could also have somebody with a cell phone and just capture it. You can buy a cell phone stand and set it up and just record that 3 minutes of it. And a lot of the new materials, especially like if you're doing a reel, will have a minimal editing software, so you can just like close and close at the ends as part of that.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. That's the extent of the questions that we've received so far. So I don't know if there's any last words you wanted to offer, or last bits of wisdom for folks, but it seems that what you shared with us has been very helpful for people, and we thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, again, I recommend that you're welcome to follow me on my social media, especially Facebook. I post rural ministry stuff all the time. You can also just reach out to me, message me there. I'll answer questions for you. I post my other offerings. I use it mainly as professional. So there'll be some stuff like I went to a concert or I'm hanging out with friends, but mostly it's going to be sharing about my churches and my ministry as part of that reality. And I would also say, just try things. Be willing to experiment and figure out what your church's story is. Learn your church's story, learn how the people are, and just go with it. Be weird about it too. People want an interesting church. We don't need to be cookie cutter. We can be an interesting and weird church. Oh, that's that church that, and we're rural. They had that, grease pig competition on the front lawn of the church to celebrate something, and ended up getting spread all over the county. And now we know that they do that. Have a weird thing for your church. Make your church interesting in the community. Like, your church has a reputation. Why not try to make that something interesting?
That's really good, Jonathan. Thank you so much.
All right, now we're going to welcome our final speaker for today, who's Jeremy Brown. Jeremy has over 10 years of leadership and coaching experience. He currently serves as the Director of Training and Development at United Methodist Communications. Jeremy has specialized in facilitating a training atmosphere aimed at fostering growth and creating a culture of learning excellence. In his spare time, he enjoys his communication skills to diffuse and manage tight situations through his work as a college football official. So we welcome Jeremy with us today.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and thank you, Rachel, and thank you to the conference for allowing me to be here today. This is a great opportunity to be able to share with you guys. Again, I'm Jeremy Brown. I currently serve as the Director of Training and Development at United Methodist Communications. And so I enjoyed both the speakers before us, and I was very glad to be able to sit in on them. And so with UMCOM and me being a representative of training and UMCOM today, we'll take a slightly different role in the sense that our two speakers before us told us a lot about application. And so what I'll hope to do today is to give you some resources and some additional avenues on top of what they've given you. A lot of great stuff talked about today, but some additional avenues how UMCOM can be of service to you. And so essentially what we'll do today as the time that we have is we'll kind of open up with UMCOM a little bit, what we do. Hopefully a lot of you know about us. Some of you may be new to us, or some of us may know that we exist, but don't know what we offer. We'll talk about some things to consider as we continue to ramp up our communication journey. We'll talk about how we can help. And then lastly, before I close my presentation, I'm going to want to jump around to some of the websites, because in talking to Rachel and preparing for this, one of the things we want to do is not only tell about the resources that are available, but to actually show them and give you some idea of where they can be found and how you can use them. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and get this going here. Rachel, can you see this on my screen, ma'am? I may. Uh-oh. Sorry, guys, 1 second. Oh, 1 second, guys. I'm sorry. Rachel, were you able to see my slideshow?
Yes, I could see it when you just had it up. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to see it, quite frankly.
Sorry, that's all right.
But here we go. We'll try it again. And Rachel, if you will, once I pull it up, will you tell me that you're able to see it, just so I'm make sure that everybody can see it?
Yes, of course.
All right, thank you. All right, can you see it, Rachel?
Yes, I can see it.
All right, fantastic. All right, so I'll leave it up in this view. I wasn't able to see it for a second, but again, my name is Jeremy, and so here's what we're going to talk about. Just a snapshot of communications in your community. And the reason I titled this snapshot is because communications is so vast, right? We're not able to maybe answer all the questions today, but we can really hone in on some things that, as I like to say, it really gets us going on our communication journey. And if you look there at the bottom, that is my email, jbrown@umcom.org. And if you'll also notice, I have it there in bold. The reason I put that there in bold is to let you know that I am a resource for you. UMCOM is a resource for you. I want that to stand out for you. If there's any type of communication question or a resource you're looking for, you now have a friend at United Methodist Communications that you can reach out to. And if I don't have the answer, I'll be happy to try to find an answer for you. So please take my email and please reach out if there's anything I can do for you. So at UMCOM, of course, again, many of you may be familiar with us. For 80 years, we've told the story of the United Methodist Church, the work that God is doing, the work that the local churches are doing. I'm going to steal from Jonathan in saying that everything we do is to help you tell your story and help you tell about your heritage. So, we sit around and we think about how do we improve what we communicate, how we communicate, and the impact our communications have on our audience. I often share with groups that I talk to or training groups as an idiom, just to say that UMCOM, we sit in our lab every day considering these questions. How do we help you communicate better? And so that just goes back to the point of please use us as a resource. And again, I'm going to show you some things later on in this talk, and hopefully you'll find them to be useful. But before we get into resourcing, one thing that I always challenge each church and each church leader to think about is who are we and how are we communicating? And again, to steal from Jonathan, that story and that heritage. And so I find that a great first step in identifying our story and identifying our heritage is to assess the values and the vision of your church and your communications ministry. And your communications ministry may be one person, it may be 3 people, but if you are communicating with the people in your church or individuals outside of your church, then you in fact have a communications ministry. Now the question becomes, what is it that we want to communicate? What do we want to talk to people about? What do we want them to know about us? It could be as simple as event that's going on. It could be as complex of who we are and how we serve our community and our local areas. It just really differs by church. Every church is different. It does not have to be cookie cutter. You can be unique because each one of your churches and your organizations are unique organizations. So something that we want to look at, or at least 5 questions that we want to consider in thinking about the values of what we want to communicate are as such. And I'll share this presentation with Rachel. I believe she'll be able to disseminate it to everybody should anybody want it, but this will be your presentation to have. But 5 things we want to consider. Why was your church created? What is your church's mission? These things are important when we start to communicate who we are to our community and even to the people that sit in the pews every Sunday. Who are we, and what are we trying to achieve? A lot of that comes from our value system. What audience are you working to reach? What is the most important goal of your church? And what does your church do well? The reality is most of our churches, if not all of our churches, do something well. Whether we're individuals or churches or organizations, we also often look at those things that, oh, we have to do this better, or we need to do this, or we need to communicate this better. Well, one place to start is, what are we doing well? How can we grow? As you see there in the picture, the tree, the core values, how can we grow on those things that we're already doing well? So those are 5 things that I would like for you to consider when we start to talk about values. And then our values undoubtedly lead to our vision, okay? Our vision is our long-term goal, our long-term picture. What values drive the performance of your communication? Who would you like to communicate with? So oftentimes when I speak with churches and leaders, I give them what I call the vision test. If I were to close my eyes for 5 seconds and open them, what would our communication ministry look like? Who would we be communicating with? How would we be communicating? What does our communication look like? What colors are we using? What does our branding look like? That's the vision. So what are potential barriers to your success in this vision? What successes in communication have you already experienced? And what is the most important thing you want others to know about your church? The vision will drive the strategy. So we talked about values, we talked about the vision test and how we look at long-term, and long-term is different for everybody. Long-term can be 1 year, long-term can be 6 months, it can be 3 months. 3 months is a little bit shorter, but depending on what you want to achieve and where you are in your journey, 3 months may be a good starting point. But the vision will drive the strategy. Now that we have a vision, now that we've considered these questions about values, now that we've considered these questions about vision, what is our strategy to get there? How do we get from point A to point B, and with the hope of achieving these things that we see after the vision test? Again, vision test, 5 seconds, eyes closed. I open them. What does our communication strategy and ministry look like? And so in talking about these things, one thing that we hope to achieve at UMCOM for all leaders and all people communicating is to take you out of the reactive state. The reactive state is somebody drops something on the desk, oh, we have to get this out right now, or, oh, we should have communicated this 6 months ago. Well, that means that we don't have a strategy. And we know that, you know, when we're reactive, that can cause mistakes or it can cause burnout. And burnout is a very real thing amongst people that work in the church. So we want to try to take you out of the reactive state and hopefully get you to the proactive state. Now, in the proactive state, we still have things to communicate, but we're doing it in more of a manageable way. And, you know, and again, it's in listening to my fellow speakers today, not every church is going to have 4 or 5 people to be able to, it may be a 1-person job, which makes it even more important that we get to the proactive state to where we can think ahead. One thing that I often share is that, you know, the church calendar is pretty much the same every year. We know when Easter is, we know when Lent is, we know when Christmas is. We can plan around those things and create a communication strategy that helps us look forward versus things being last minute. And I think that becomes even more important in our small and rural churches because we possibly may not have as many hands to do the work. So we want to get you to the proactive state. So that being said, those are kind of the things that we're, you know, from a UMCOM perspective, in addition to resourcing, those are some of the things that we're hoping to achieve, you know, helping churches build values, or at least consider values, helping churches consider their long-term vision, building a communication strategy around it. And hopefully within a communication strategy, we go from reactive to being proactive about our communications. All right. So the question becomes, all right, Jeremy, so we talked about that. I still need help. The values and the visions and the strategy sounds great. How do I get help? Great question. So now over the next few slides, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some of my favorite things. And they're my favorite things because these are the things that I talk to churches about, that if you need help, here's a great place to go. These things are offered at UMCOM. Some of them have a nominal cost. Most of the things that we offer are free. You just kind of got to ask somebody or dig around on the websites and kind of see the things that we offer. But I'm going to give you a head start here by giving you some of these resources. And again, this presentation will be available to you, or you could take notes on it. So one thing I want you to know is that we have, over the last few years, maybe 2 or 3, been working on a website called resourceumc.org. So that's resource, RESOURCE, UMC.org. And it doesn't just contain communication stuff. It contains a bevy of materials and resources for churches and church leaders. However, it is managed by United Methodist Communications, and we do have a communications piece on resourceumc.org. So what we'll do over the next few slides is I won't say fly through them, but I'm going to highlight these things. But as part of my presentation, I want to actually take you to these websites. So I'll tell you what they are in this piece. We'll take a few questions if you have them, and then we'll actually go and look at the websites and look at some of the resources that are available to you. So the first resource I want you to know about is our local church marketing services. We call it your local church services. And while marketing is in the word, they do a lot of things. They work with websites, they work with marketing, social media. They have a number of things to help you with. And again, we're going to look at that website. This is some social media graphics that they create. And actually, these are Easter trending. And we will have those too. And you'll find those on the local church services site. And they're really great. And this kind of goes back to the question of reactive versus proactive. If you're going to have a social media presence, which I think is a good thing for those churches that can manage it, then we have already created pictures and we've already created postings that you can take and use for your social media sites. So it doesn't have to be a matter of you, for lack of better words, recreating the wheel. We have things that we can share with you. So we'll look at some of those. Another one of my favorites is a church marketing plan tool. In a nutshell, it's all about creating a unique and effective marketing plan. Again, how do we get from reactive to proactive? How do we use the data and the vision to create strategy? And most importantly, how do we now implement that strategy? And we'll look at that website. My third favorite is, or they have so much on this page, is for my podcast fans, which I'm a big podcast guy. As I sit in front of my computer or I'm driving, we have the MyCom podcast. We have Pastoring in the Digital Parish, where we talk to different communication leaders, and they tell us about the things that are going on in their churches, outreach ideas, new technology, just communications overall. And on the MyCom page, it not only has a podcast, but it has different resources, articles that you can utilize to just learn about communications. How do we get better at that? And so we'll look at that site. And of course, my favorite is communications training. That could be found at resourceumc.org/training. This is the department that I head. And so this is my favorite because I love training. It's what I do. And so the site, resourceumc.org/training. Again, you can go there and you can find a number of courses, and we're always looking at new content and new courses to put up there. All the courses on that site are free, no cost. If you have the knack to learn or an itch to learn, go to resourceumc.org/training, and there are courses there for you to take. And again, there are no cost to you, and we'll look at that site as well. And here are just a few examples of the courses that you might see on there. Video editing for churches, creating hybrid worship services. Obviously over the last few years, more people have began to do some things online, and in some cases, some have went back to in-person service, but kept the online component. So we created a course for creating hybrid worship services. A welcome ministry course. How do we welcome visitors? Because we often talk about how do we reach visitors? How do we talk to visitors? How do we get in touch with visitors? Or, the question now becomes, now that we have them in the door, how do we build a community? Well, what things can we do? Because it's great to be able to contact them. It's great to be able to get them there. Now, how do we make them part of our family and part of the family of Christ? So that's in the welcoming ministry. And then digital media for ministry is also another course. So those are just a few things that are examples of courses that you can find on the training website. And so with that said, let's take a few moments for questions if there's any.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. That was really, really helpful overview. And it's really good knowing that there are so many resources that are available. So far, I don't have any questions from anybody. So maybe I think you've been pretty thorough so far. So you've answered a lot of folks' questions.
Okay.
Does anybody on the panel have a question for Jeremy, or shall we move on with the next part of our presentation?
I did want to note, I am making a list of the websites that Jeremy is referencing. So in my follow-up email, I will have direct links to all of these pages as well, in addition to his slides. So thank you, Jeremy.
No problem. And so now what we're going to do is to kind of move on to part B of this presentation here is, as I told you before in the beginning of the presentation, is not only did we want to tell you about it, right? We want you to actually be able to see it and show you some of these things. So those favorite things that I just talked about, I'm going to pull up a share screen again, and we're going to go through some of those pages with our remaining time here. 1 second. And Rachel, you can see my page, correct?
Yes, I do see
All right.
it.
Thank you. All right, so this essentially is Resource UMC. Now you'll see there that here, and I'm just going to be clicking around here. So again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to throw them out there and we'll get to them. So this is the United Methodist Communication portion of this website, or at least the kind of front page of United Methodist Communications. And here are some of our friends at United Methodist Communications. And again, as you kind of just, you got to take time to kind of get in here and kind of look around. Here's a guide to church communication for leaders. Of course, we'll talk about training and we'll actually go to that site. But it was interesting that I was looking at the site this morning, and here was one of the headliner articles: how a small church can build a big marketing plan. So, you know, that just says to me again that this is a thing, obviously a question that the webinar creators and facilitators have thought about, and we have an article for it right here on the front page of our United Methodist Communication site on Resource UMC. So you know, it just comes to mind, please again use these resources, because the resources are being created. The question often becomes, okay, well, what's the implementation of, or how do I find them? Well, the question is, we can go to Resource UMC and find them. So I know I've talked about that, but I want to reiterate it, that these things are here for you, and they have been created with you and your church in mind. So here's the local church services site. So that's resourceumc.org/LCS. And so, you know, of course, Rachel is writing these down for us, but a question becomes, okay, well, what if I forget the URL? Well, you just come to services and it's already there for you. Local church marketing services. And so again, this essentially is a department at UMCOM of individuals whose task is to work with local churches, hence the name. So they work with local churches, again, from a marketing perspective. As you can see here on the side, they have branding and logo services, social media services, new church start packages, and website services. And so we're going to look at the website piece. And, you know, I think, again, with Jonathan having went right before, man, the things he said are fresh on my mind. And so he kind of talked about social media and websites. And I agree with him in the sense that if you can manage a social media page and do it, then that's great. For those that, you know, social media may not be their thing, or their audience may not be heavy on social media, websites are still a viable way to do that. And lucky for you at UMCOM and the local church marketing team, we work with churches on social media services and website services. So whatever your fancy is, or whatever it is that makes most sense to you, we have both. All right, this is the church marketing plan tool. Excuse me. So this is just something that, again, from a marketing perspective, if we're thinking about how do we use our values, how do we use our vision to look and to see how to reach out to individuals, how to reach out and work with our community, then this is one way to go about that. So just wanted to show this, that this is there for you. And this is no different. This is found on Resource UMC as well. And that was one of the kind of brainchild or brain thoughts behind Resource UMC, is we wanted to be able to take these services and put them in one place for you. Versus you having to go here and look or go there and look. How do we get these into one area? And so hopefully this is being helpful for you. And so here we have MyCom. I'm going to use the search button just so you can kind of see the search functionality. And so MyCom also found on Resource UMC. Also one of my favorites, also one of the things that I think is very helpful for our local churches in finding knowledge on how to do different things and learn about communications is here. You can subscribe to the MyCom newsletter. It's not an overbearing newsletter. Of course, you know, in this day and age, we all have things emailing us all the time, but you can subscribe to MyCom. It's a bi-weekly e-newsletter, I believe. No, I know it's bi-weekly. And it just, you know, it invites you to look at different things as we continue to create resources around communications at UMCOM. We want to also be able to tell you about it, whether it's a new podcast or a new article. So here are some of the things down here, like, for instance, you have a podcast here, techniques for getting to know your audience, you know, how to plan for church emergencies. That looks like an article. 8 ways to connect young adults to church. And so here are some of the, you know, again, just some of the things that we are creating and have been created with you in mind. So I implore you to go and check these things out. And of course, the search functionality works pretty well. So then from MyCom, of course, as I stated before, my favorite is communications training. So, you know, as earlier stated, every course is free. You know, it's all of no cost. So if you're sitting there, you have free time and you say, hey, I'd like to go learn about something. Or if you're sitting there and say, hey, I got a question about this, but I'm not sure I necessarily know how to do it. One place that you can come and look is the communications training portal on Resource UMC. And again, you've seen some of these courses in my example that I showed earlier. We have things, video editing, of course, launching your website, which we just talked about, website, social media, welcoming ministry. There's a number of courses here, and we're always adding more. So again, free of cost to you. They're there for you. They're available 24/7. Most courses may take an hour or 2 hours, but here's the thing. You don't have to complete a course in one sitting because everything is kind of cloud-based. You just kind of do it at your own whim. So don't feel as if, oh, well, I only have 15 minutes. Come and do 15 minutes of learning and see if you can find the answers to what you're looking for. We have set the training program up to be something that you can kind of come in and come out as you please. Whether you're a morning person or a night owl, which I'm a night owl, you can come and learn at your pleasure. And I'll show you an example of a course here. We'll go to capturing better smartphone photos, which is important, right? Whether you have a whole bunch of equipment or you have no equipment, most of us in this age probably have a smartphone, just because phones have become smarter and most of them are smartphones by default. So you come in here, capturing better smartphone photos. It tells you what the course is all about. It tells you the 3 learning modules that you have there, and then you just register. So here I'm in the system. Let's see here. All right, UMCOM training, Jared Brown. So it's as simple as a name, an email, a zip code. That's it. That's it. And just to be clear and to clarify, the only way we use that information is just to say, hey, we have a friend here that's taking training. So a name, an email, and a zip code. It's as simple as hitting the register button. And once you hit the register button, thank you for registering for the online training course, Creating Better Smartphone Photos. And then here are the 3 learning modules for this particular course. And I'll just go to the first one just to show you what it looks like. Taking smartphone photos. And then this is a shorter course, or more of what we would call a micro training. But it goes through and it gives you information. And a lot of our courses, it has videos or tutorials. Like here, it has a video to help you learn more about smartphones and how to utilize them. And then, you know, other modules are taking pictures with your smartphone and even permissions. I think in the earlier question to Jonathan, it was about photos or didn't want to be online, and how do you get permission people? How do you have some of those conversations about, you know, because you want to get permission to use people's photos or to capture them on video. You want them to know ahead of time. So some of those things are in the course as well. But that's just an example of an online course. So again, some of them are smaller, what we would call a micro training. Some of them are more extensive, like digital media for ministry is a lot more extensive course, just because there's so much in digital media. It's just by default is a lot more. And oh, I did want to show you something else. One more thing I wanted to show you here. I'm going to just go to a website. If you bear with me. So this is a website that we're going away from and making and kind of transferring all of our content is on resource-umc/training. But just for clarity's sake, this is a website that we use or have used for some other things. But I wanted to show you something. And so last year, probably in the fall, we did a communications learning week. And essentially it was a whole week of just communication experts and moderators, and they just talked about communications, and we did Q&A, something like this webinar, and there's about probably 20 something sessions. And here's a list of all those things. Now, the reason for me bringing you here is to tell you that after this webinar, I am going to send a promo code, because this did have a cost attributed to it. I'm going to send a promo code to Rachel, and you guys can access all the content from Communications Learning Week at no cost. So I want you to be able to take part in this information that we have curated from that week. I was just thinking about it today. I was like, I would love for them to have another takeaway. And this is a great takeaway, and it has a lot of information in here. So I'll get that promo code to Rachel in her follow-up. I'm sure she'll be able to send that to you, and you'll be able to register for this course at no cost. And again, it has all this content here that we curated from our Communications Learning Week. And with that said, I think that is everything that I had for you today. And I'm available for any questions.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. It really is encouraging that there's so much available, and it was really helpful seeing how you walked us through getting there and how to access all the information. One of the participants had just said that they've taken training in the past and it was outsourced and was kind of hard to communicate when they had questions. So they were glad to see that things were housed internally. I'm looking forward to learning from the offerings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one thing we try to do, especially here. I mean, it's housed internally. I'm one of the facilitators. We have different SMEs within United Methodist Communication that also serve as facilitators. So our aim so much is to really equip churches and church leaders. So we want to be able to be available to you. So thank you for bringing up that point about, other trainings. And hopefully, in addition to that, the person that, made the statement, our other leaders, on the webinar are able to see that there's a connection to not to be corny or use the word connect, but there's a connection there between what we do and what it is you guys need. And again, we try to do these courses and create these resources with each of you in mind.
Well, that is very helpful. Lordette had asked, is there a time frame for taking the Learning Week course?
No. Typically when we first do something, and that's a great question. Typically when we kind of release something, we usually have a time frame of 6 months. But in this case, no, there is no time frame. You'll have the promo code, and because there's so much information there, right? So, and that's probably where the question maybe is coming from, is that in the midst of everything else going on, how do we capture all of these things that were done during Communication Learning Week? It would be very hard. So with that being said, that no, there is no time frame. It is yours to take and to take at your leisure.
Excellent. Mary Kay had asked, can you share about the BUMC campaign?
Sure, I sure can. So I'll share what I know, right? So the BUMC campaign is essentially a campaign, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school here, right? In saying that the UMC is in a transition phase at this point in time. And the BUMC campaign was created in the sense of, while we may be in transition, there are so many things yet to celebrate about our community, our connection. There are so many things yet to share about our joint story together. And so it's again, in a sense of creating things that, and with you guys in mind, there are promotional materials that you can use from BUMC. And I want to make sure I say this correctly. In a world where, and again, I'm going to use Jonathan as an example because he was right before me. He said at the end of his presentation where someone said he was talking about his church disaffiliated, but he hadn't heard anything about, you know what I mean? Like, where is that coming from? And so the BUMC campaign is essentially a marketing promotion or a promotion to help people see the UMC in all the glory and all the great things that are still going on. Does it mean that we're not in transition? Does it mean that there isn't some dissension? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that from a connection standpoint and from a, if you will, family standpoint, there are still so many things that we could talk about. And as much as what we do at UMCOM, the question becomes, well, what if I, as a church leader, don't know how to actually communicate that? What if I don't know how to create the promotional materials to do that? Well, that's where BUMC campaign comes in. Here are some promotional materials that, should you want to use them, we have created them for you so that you can still share the story and share the story of the things that's going on in your church and the things that's going on in the UMC. So hopefully that's helpful. And I really want to believe that there's a website that's really helpful, and I'll include that in my email to Rachel once I kind of find that link, because that's a really great question, and it's fairly new, so people are really starting to gain traction, if you will. So thank you for asking that.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do you also, somebody had asked, do you also support UWF?
UWF, what is that?
I believe.
The Wesley.
I believe. Oh, I had it a second ago. Sorry. I think it's
United Women in Faith.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, do we support UWF? I'll be honest and say I don't know. And the reason I say that is because I'm not as familiar with what UWF is. And to the tenor of the question, when I support is sound, if the question is, can UWF use UMCOM resources? Yes. Especially the free ones, and because there's so much on there that's just available to you regardless. So I'll apologize that I don't have a 100% accurate answer. But what I will say is that our resources are available to anybody that can click on the website.
Great. Thank you so much. We also had a question. You mentioned social media graphics, images. Where were they available?
The social media graphics and images, one place that they're available, I know for sure, are resourceumc.org/LCS. And that's where you'll find the local church marketing services. And so those should be there, and those come out. So again, even in the front half of my presentation, I talked about moving from reactive to proactive. They're really good in local church about, that church calendar, things that you would use for Lent and Easter, and, creating those things and getting those in the church's hands. So, okay, you have a lot going on during this time of year, right? We all know that. So here are some things that you can use to promote and to use social media graphics during Christmas and Advent time. They're really good about creating those. You have a lot going on. So let us help you with that, part of what you have going on so that you can focus on other things. Or as we know, as leaders, while we don't want to have to put out any fires, there's always one to put out. So let us be able to help you on some other avenues. But you should be able to find those at resourceumc.org/LCS. And if for some reason they're not there, just reach out to me. I can get them to you.
Great. Thanks so much. Mark also had asked, he said there are some so-called experts that promote short videos on Facebook to invite people to your church, basically training people in how to be invitational in that setting. Is there a training available on what that might look like?
What inviting people to your church might look like?
Yeah, I think from what I'm getting of the question, from the context of Facebook, but the internet in general, what strategies, or if there's a training that supports that goal
of inviting people, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I would have to point that question back to the resources, because we've created a number of articles, and we have some trainings on it as well. So to kind of answer the question of what that might look like, it's kind of tough because each of our churches are very unique, right? We have a unique population, we serve a unique demographic, we're in a unique piece of the locality. So what we do, if you will, for example, the values and visions questions that I had in my presentation, those are going to be different for everybody. There's no one size fits all to the communication piece of inviting people to your church. Everybody's different. The South is going to be different from the West Coast. Winter is going to be different from summer. You know what I mean? So I can't say that there's a picture of what that looks like. What I can say is that there are resources and think pieces that you can start to look at, and we offer some. And I love in his question how he says so-called experts. That was pretty good. But there are pieces that we offer to say, okay, for your church, here are some things to start thinking about, and how do you use those things to reach out to people in your community? Because each of our local churches are different. So hopefully that was helpful in answering the question.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Charles had just shared that their church developed a vision statement over a year ago, but they never really went further to work out the strategy of living out that vision. They're kind of in a place of being stuck. They're got a lot of inertia. They need to look at the vision statement again, determine whether the vision's applicable at this point and how to move forward. Is there anything on the resources page that would assist them in this discernment process?
First question or first statement from myself. I love that they even went down the road of getting into a vision statement. So that's worth the applause in itself. You'll be surprised how many churches haven't gotten that far. And it's a very key piece, right? As we talked about, values lead to vision, vision leads to strategy. They just haven't got from the vision to strategy standpoint just yet. So to answer that question, one thing that I would lead to, and it was Charles, I believe, one place where I would lead Charles is the church marketing plan tool. So they may not be to the piece yet where they're ready to quote unquote market, but in the church marketing plan tool, it talks about just that. How do we take this vision that we've created for ourselves and how do we turn that into strategy? How do we move from what we see to implementation of what we want? So that would be a great place to start. Are there other resources? Yes. But that's one that comes top of mind right now. And especially because you guys did the work of doing the vision. I mean, that's wholly important. So seeing that they did the work of at least starting at a vision, I would lead them to the church marketing plan tool and say, Charles, take a look at that and see if that gives you a leg up, in starting to move towards that strategy and where you guys eventually want to be.
Thank you, Jeremy. This question here, I kind of have held for a few minutes just to kind of get through some of the specific questions that people had for you, Jeremy. This one might be more of a overarching question for the entire panel. So I'll just put it out there. Maybe we can answer it now. Maybe we need to follow up later. But the question Gary posed is, can someone address grant opportunities to cover costs involved in getting the internet from the street into the building? They're just curious about what opportunities there may be to get a church connected that doesn't have those resources in place.
I'll say just as a matter of, I don't know about my other two esteemed panelists. I don't necessarily have an answer, but that's a really good question. But I don't necessarily have an answer to this one. Hopefully they can help, or it may be a follow-up.
Yeah, I think that's that is an excellent question. I think that there is an answer to that. I think we need to just probably have some. Oh, go ahead, Jonathan.
I do have some answers. So I know at least in my conference, our conference was giving out communications grants, and you could be used that to add or enhance internet in your church, particularly if you're going to be using the internet for missions. And that sort of reality. Also, there are other organizations that will give that out if you're willing to open your church as an after-school program or a senior center type location. So figure out ways to partner with agencies in the community. I know that in my area of where I'm living, that we don't have a senior services program in this area of the county. So I'm actually meeting with people later today from my conference to look at what we need to do to get one of our churches ready to be a space for senior adults to go. And that may be enhancing our internet or other technology things to go with our church. And that means that my conference may be willing to give me funds to do that as part of that, as well as local granting agencies may also do that. If you have local foundations that are really focused on community service or education, to reach out to those.
Very helpful. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And we can always follow up with additional information as well regarding those opportunities. Jeremy, I don't see any other questions specifically for you, but I thought maybe just give you a chance to offer any final thoughts or last bits of wisdom for us. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was really helpful. A lot of good practical information for us to follow up on.
Okay, well, thank you, Tony. Again, thanks for having me. In terms of last words, I'll give a few bullet points. One, I implore you, again, go to Resource UMC, move around, see what's out there. We are here for you. You have a friend at UMCOM. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if there's something I can answer or something that may be a communication question that I can pass along. So I really press you to do that. Communications is a journey. There's no one way to do it. And oftentimes there's no easy way to do it. I mean, if communications was easy, then we would all be great communicators. But that's not the case. So with that being said, ask for help, seek help. The fact that you're here today says a lot already. And then you may have heard this, it's old as day, but try again. If something doesn't go right, don't get discouraged. Look at where we are and let's see what else we can do to try to get us from that values point to vision, from that vision to strategy, from reactive to proactive. And let's see, you know, how we can continue to move the mission of Christ and make disciples. So I thank you for the time today, and I appreciate you guys having me here.
I want to thank all three of our speakers. It was wonderful to have Keon and Jonathan and Jeremy. I feel like we presented just a nice variety of information and resources for our small churches and our rural churches. I hope everybody was able to walk away with something that was helpful to them today. After we finish the webinar, before the weekend, I will send out an email to everybody who is registered. We'll share with them a survey so they can give feedback. I'll also share some of the actual presentations from our presenters, along with a variety of links that were mentioned. And then once we have done some editing to the recording of this webinar, we will also share that with you all, hopefully within the next week. And then you will also receive a CEU certificate for participating in today's webinar. That'll be in the email that I'm sending as well. So we, again, are just grateful for everybody sharing their time and their knowledge with us today. We'll have Tony Arnold close us in prayer. And thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you in the near future for some other training on communications.
Let us join our hearts together. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for your love and your grace in each and every one of our lives. Lord, whether we're clergy, laity, we know, Lord, that you are working. We know, God, that despite how hard the road has been, despite the fact that we're still recovering from a long season of pandemic, and really working through a lot of the different pressures, the different just the different difficulties of our time right now, whether in the wider society or even within the church itself. Lord, you're still on the throne and you're good. And we pray, God, that you would continue to guide us, that you would continue to direct us, that you would fill us with your spirit, your very presence, that we would go out from this digital space, and that now that we have more knowledge, now that we have more, hopefully, inspiration, that we can join in the work that you're already doing, Lord, with a better strategy, with better resources, and with perhaps greater clarity to reach your people and to reach all the people that you've called us to reach with the good news of Jesus Christ, that we may see this world transformed before our eyes. Help us, Lord. We know there's a lot of work to do, but may we rely on your grace in our lives completely as we do this work. And help us not to forget, Lord, that we are in connection, that we have brothers and sisters that we can lean on, that we can rely on, that we can collaborate with, so that we are not in this thing alone. Thank you, God, for each of our speakers today. Thank you for their hearts for you, for your kingdom. Thank you for their churches and for their passion. Lord, we also pray for every single person who's here, and even those who will see this webinar after the fact. We pray, Lord, that you would work mightily in each and every one of our lives, that you may be glorified. So, God, we pray all of this with gratitude and great expectation in Jesus' holy name. Amen.